Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to the Thursday night edition of Spaced Out Radio Tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for taking the time to tune us in as Jurgen Hess, a.k.a. Hoodoo Tall, is going to join us. We have Dirty Filth here as well. And the best part about tonight, we have each and every one of you, including Race Fan in the gold medal position, Kitty Caddywhack with a silver, SJ with a bronze medal tonight. Let's go to the chat room. Captain K-Rod is in fourth. And we got Attorney at Large, Michael Morris, Kitty Caddywhack, Robert Lamoth, Bar Madison. How y'all doing? Hippie Deidre, nice to see you. And let's see, Eternity Eternal, Ethanol, Karen in the Woo Train, Frankie B, Necessary Dialogue, Stephanie, Kenny Blankenship, and Laura Lobbs. Little Timmy James. How you doing, buddy? Working hard on the website. Looking good. Lisa Smith is here. Lisa Smith will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind. To the left of the studio. Fast Hemi, nice to see you. John Jackson, thanks for coming on in. Lenda, nice to have you back as we continue on with roll call. Mel WD-40 is here lubing us up for tonight's show because you always want to go into a show about the Bradshaw Ranch nice and smooth, so we need a lot of lube to get ready for tonight. Thank you, Mel, for doing that. Search and Destroy, nice to see you as we continue on with our roll call. Who's next here? Paramarv. How you doing, buddy? Good to see you. John Lamb has returned. John Lamb will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind, to the right of the studio. Scrolling on down, we have Digger Dog. And who else is next? Doug Shelby is here. The Doug Shelby has arrived, which means we can officially start this show. Susan, how are you tonight? And who's next? Keyshawn, how you doing, my friend? And scrolling on down, Algaray over on Twitch. He literally, and this is truth, he swung a sledgehammer at a big semi-truck tire 98 times in 3 minutes. 98 times in 3 minutes. His arms are vibrating right now. Dragonfly, how you doing? Panda on Fire, nice to see you. Walter Kochabinski. Walter Sobchak. The Walters have returned. Eric Garcia, how you doing? Welcome. J True Seeker. Rocket Rory. Phineas Coathanger over on X, how you doing? Kurt M. Good to have you here, my man. In the studio, how you doing? Lisa Savoy, welcome to SOR Chat as we continue on with our roll call. Katashef Chris, how you doing? Spitfires, oh yeah. Went to the game with my son. Oh, nice. Yeah. The Greyhounds are always a tough team. Even when they're having an off season, the Greyhounds are always a tough team. Always have been. All right, moving on down. Emperor Penguin, nice to see you. Noble Patrick, thanks for coming on in. Flubber Lane, nice to have you here. JSCO and Necessary Dialogue. Oh, you changed your picture. That's what screwed me up. Yeah, you did. See, I noticed these things. Millennium, my man, nice to have you here as we continue on with our roll call. Pam Harris. I probably said your name already, but I'll say it again. Pam Harris. JMJ12. Mama Catherine. Mwah, I love you, Mama Catherine. I hope you had a wonderful day, and hopefully we'll make it a good show for you. Deadfish. Nina Williams. Broken Shadow Feather. See if I can screw up your name one more time. Kevin Kennedy. How are you? JW3, what's happening? What in tarnation has returned? Thank you for joining us. Just another guy named Harry. Nice to see you. Area 53, Paul Demon. Good to have you guys here. And let's see here. Laura Elizabeth, looking lovely tonight. Yeah, you are. You know it. Hello and welcome to the radio and podcast side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Good to have you all here. We look at the strangeness of Sedona, Arizona, and Bradshaw Ranch. Hoodoo Tall, Jurgen Hess is here tonight for the big show as we are in roll call on YouTube. Bobbert, nice to see you. Boondock, good to have you here. And who's next on our list? Lee the Bee, good to see you. Red Tip Savage, welcome to SOR Chat. Kaz, nice to see you. And we're caught up. Hey, I want to remind everybody the super chat is open. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show. And throw those horns up, everybody. Why? Let's rock.
Shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul. Watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated. Misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of
Our
fun
website,
have invaded.
spacedoutradio.com.
Watching you and watching me.
Rock out Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our streaming as well. You can follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We got a great show for you tonight. We're going to head to Sedona, Arizona, where Hoodoo Tall is checking out all the high strangeness from monsters to aliens and everything in between. Then in hour number 3, it is going to be jam-packed, everybody. Starting off with Swamp Dweller. Little Timmy James will be here for the UFO report. It's Dave 101 night, and we'll get to the weird news of the week. So let's get right to it because it's a busy, busy night. Hoodoo Tall is followed around the legendary Bradshaw Ranch in Sedona, Arizona, the last number of years. That's where creepy cryptids, monsters, legends, dinosaurs, UFOs, aliens, and ghosts in between have all been seen and all seem a little too real. Yeah. Why does he do it? Well, it started off as a curiosity, and now it's become a passion to try and find out what is the consciousness, the source, the energy, and the mystery behind absolutely everything that revolves around Arizona. Let's get right to him. Hoodoo Tall, Jurgen Hess, it's always good to have you on Spaced Out Radio. Your mohawk is looking fantastic. How are you?
Doing great, Dave. Thank you for having me on again. It's always so nice to see a familiar face and have a conversation with some really good people.
Awesome. And we're going to have a really good conversation tonight. For our audience who may not know you, how did this all begin? Because you were living just a regular life. You were doing the 9 to 5. You were leaving California, doing your thing. And then all of a sudden, what happened to lead you to Bradshaw Ranch?
Well, I was definitely trying to lead a regular life. It's really all I ever wanted. You know, I didn't want any of this kind of stuff. I had an interest in it, definitely. And you know, it was weird over all the years. It was like no matter how much effort I put into this normal idea of life, just like a job, a family, and kids, just couldn't happen. But other things started happening when I was 24 that I couldn't explain really. Bizarre things in my room, like things would go missing at night and show up months later. One night I woke up and there were these beings in my room and I froze and all these bizarre. One thing was people kept handing me rune stones I didn't know. Like just these weird things that I didn't really understand and they didn't make any sense to me. They didn't line up anyhow. And that's when I sought out some kind of advice and found John Lear. Um, John was a pioneer kind of in this field. He was the person that brought us Bob Lazar and the first one to say Area 51's there. And, John's the reason we had the show Coast to Coast. Art Bell was a regular radio show host and interviewed John and was so taken back by what he said that he changed his whole format. So I was really fortunate that John kind of took me under his wing and was so open to me because that's where it all started was with John. If I didn't have his influence or have him as like this mentor for me, I really wouldn't have gotten anywhere. I just would have been as confused as everyone else. But spending time with John at his house, I knew John for about 15 years. And I would go to Las Vegas just to see him and just to sit with him for a day and hang out. And he had the best collection of UFO photos, pictures of the moon from before 1970. That's when NASA started airbrushing everything. So pre 1970s when you see good stuff. And the reason John had this stuff is because he knew people and he went and collected the information. He didn't just take everyone's hearsay. Him and Bob Lazar, he would tell me, they would get in their car and drive to New Mexico and look for the guy who wrote a paper just to try and get to the source of the information. And so when John would learn something new, he would let it change his perspective because that's what learning is. And that's what he taught me to do as well. And it sounds very simple, but you'd be surprised how many people, especially in this field, they have a preconceived notion of what these things are. And they go out in the field to try and prove their preconceived notion. Whereas, John had convinced me UFOs were real. I came to Sedona to try to see one. And that's because John told me the Rendlesham Forest incident in 1980. He said that was very real. He said he talked to guys on the base. He knew that incident really happened. So I used the code from Rendlesham. Now, since then, I've realized that code that lists coordinate places on Earth might be generously translated from the original binary they got it from. Either way, Sedona was listed on this coordinate list. It was the closest place to me. I figured if this list came from a UFO, somewhere on the list would be the best place to see one. And the first time I came out here, it was exactly right. I mean, I was blown away like how obvious they are. And I've camped my whole life in 49 states. I haven't been to Alaska yet. I'll come visit you, don't worry. And I've never seen anything like what you see out here. And you definitely see some satellites, but not this many. And they come in low and they come in cloaked. And, you have these really wild experiences. And as I came out here to see those UFOs, the first time I had to come alone was several years into kind of my investigation out here. The first few years I had friends that would come camping with me. And at first they thought it was really cool to see the UFOs. But after a couple years, I found it difficult to find people that would agree to come out, watch UFOs fly over our head, and then go into a tent and go to sleep. They didn't want to deal with that. So I had to decide if I was going to come alone. The only thing that was holding me back was like this crippling anxiety I dealt with for most of my life. And I really couldn't imagine going camping alone, even for one night, let alone a week or something like that. But I figured, the opportunity to experience something out here was worth facing this anxiety I had. So I decided I'm coming. And I came out here for 10 days alone. And I never had trouble. Even that first morning, it was really bizarre. I got up that first morning in camp kind of early, and I was starting to panic, and I thought, oh, what am I going to do today? And then it hit me like I could do whatever I wanted. Nobody was there to tell me whatever I thought of was a bad idea. So I packed a bag and went out. And I was hiking through a dry creek looking for petroglyphs, not in a populated area, not on a trail. And that's when a Bigfoot started following me. I smelled it, and, I retraced all my steps and found this one of the best footprints I'll ever find, big, obvious ape footprint with a knuckle print in the sand next to it. And I was kind of taken back. I was like, no way, come on. Like there aren't apes in the Arizona mountains, because I didn't know really anything about Bigfoot. So I thought it was an ape that we hadn't discovered. And I didn't know why that happened. And then every time I'd come back, it would come through my campsite. I'd walk through the river right next to my tent. Some nights it would grunt and growl and make a ruckus. And finally I looked up Bigfoots in the area. And that's when I learned about the Bradshaw Ranch. Now, the weird thing to me was I found a video on YouTube of Tom Dongo's presentation to MUFON on his things that happen at the ranch, which I'll be doing the same thing here soon. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Tom had this presentation with his collection of evidence, and it was the most amazing collection of evidence I had ever seen, and I couldn't believe it came from one place. And so I had finally reached out to Tom and gotten a hold of him, and we became friends. But initially I was asking him about the ranch, and he said, well, the activity there has been dead. Nothing's been going on there for years. And I said, I just still want to go see it. I just want to see this place. And so he finally kind of gave me some directions. I found out how to get out there, because it's not easy to get to. It's about an 8-9 mile dirt road out there. And that first day I was there, I was blown away. Not only just bizarre kind of humanoid tracks, but there were what I later realized were these dinosaur tracks that first day. At the time, I didn't know dinosaurs had been seen on the property walking around. So to me, they just looked like big elephant feet or something, And it was pretty addictive. The wildest night out there, I had to go for 5 or 6 times during the day before I went at night, just because being on that land, there's things around you that you can't see, and they're all watching you, and you can feel it. And I'm not somebody that has special abilities. I'm not a channeler or a psychic. I don't have the ability to tune into those type of things. And I can still feel it when I'm out there. And so finally I got up the nerve to go at night, and I had a couple friends with me, and one of them had a Jeep, and so that's why we went at night, because my little car at the time couldn't get there. So we went out at night, and all I wanted to do was very simple. I wanted to go to the front yard of the house and take some flash photos with a Polaroid camera, because Tom and Linda Bradshaw would take flash photos in the front of the house, and every now and then there would be a person in the photograph that they could not see for themselves, but clear and obvious, standing right in front of the camera. I wanted to try to replicate that. So the three of us went down there, and I fired off the first picture with the Polaroid, and all I heard was the mechanical sound of a Polaroid camera. The ka-ching. Now the two friends behind me were starting to get incredibly nervous, and they asked me, did you hear that? Did you hear that? And I said, did I hear what? And they pointed over there. So I stopped and I walked to where they were, and I heard it the second time. And the second time it made the noise, it sounded like an engine the size of a building made of wood trying to be pole started, or a gigantic dinner bell out of wood, like a log ringing around this gate out there. But the speed of it, it was giant and fast. And they wanted to run out of there. And I don't blame them, but at the same time, I didn't. And I was trying to I wanted to go toward the sound, and they weren't going to let me do that. But we heard it 2 more times. It started swinging the log like a bat into the buildings, and then making another big ruckus. At the same time, the 3 of us are standing a few feet apart. 2 of us hear a stampede of horses circling us in the night. And I mean, it was really obvious. We could feel it. The 3rd guy, nothing at all. And we're like, you're telling me you can't hear that or feel it? And he said, I don't know what you're talking about. So we left, and I said, okay, well, the stampede will be easy, because if you have ever seen the aftermath of a horse stampede, it's quite a mess, and we'll know where they were. And we'll go check for damage at the building. And we go back the next day. The ranch was no different. There was no evidence of a stampede or any horses at all. The building that sounded like it was being torn down was perfectly fine. There were 20-inch tracks through the grass there, so that we could see that something was there. And that kind of really bothered me for a while, because we heard it destroying that building. So why does it not show damage? And it wasn't until I heard the stories from the Sierra Sounds that kind of validated that, because the hunters in the Sierra Sounds, they were in their shelter and they heard these things destroying their camp, and they run out and everything's fine. So that seems to be an ability they have. And the more I encountered these things and saw the abilities they have, there is no way these are terrestrial things. They just can't be.
It's amazing, Hoodoo, how there are these areas of existence, whether it's Bradshaw Ranch, whether it's Skinwalker Ranch, the Alaskan Triangle, the Bridgewater Triangle, areas where I live, where it doesn't matter what happens in that area. High strangeness seems to find these pockets where you can't understand what truly is going on or why it's going on. It's like a never-ending mystery.
Yeah, and I think it was John Keel that referred to them as window areas, which is a pretty cool kind of description for them. Tom Dongo called it merging dimensions at the ranch. And especially in areas where it's not just a Bigfoot walking around out here. In fact, most of the tracks I find aren't from a Bigfoot. And that's what makes this place so interesting to me, is the amount of different things going on. And I cannot predict how to accurately try to interact with these things. I'm not trying to catch them or sneak up on them. I want them to know I'm there. I want them to know what I'm up to, and I want them to hopefully choose to embrace me in that. I think that's the only way to really have an encounter with them, because chance encounters are brief, and we've all seen what we get from that. Really nothing.
I can
And
help you. I can help you out with that a little bit.
yeah, I need all the help I can get. That's for sure.
I don't know if this will work with you or the clan of Sasquatch you have down there, but in my 2 spots, the one especially, we do nothing.
Yeah.
We do nothing.
Yeah.
We allow them to come to us.
Yeah.
Everything is on, like when I park my vehicle, I know you're hiking in,
Right.
but in our area where I park my vehicle, I always take the same vehicle, always park it in the same spot. I do everything the same, so they become comfortable with that repetition.
Like routine. Yeah.
Then I put my lawn chair on the ground and I wait.
Right.
And I wait. And then I don't know if this happens to you, but in our area, before they start kind of arriving, I'm going to use that term loosely.
Right.
Everything will go quiet for about half an hour.
Yeah.
And then have you ever noticed that you'll hear this thud, thud on the ground, like 2 heavy stomps on the ground? Have you ever had that?
Oh, very much so. Yeah. In fact, that's one of the frequent signs that I do get that they're nearby. The thuds. Yeah.
That's when we know they're around too. They're
Yeah.
doing it up here.
So I gotta agree with you 100% on the do nothing. Well, I've just been instead having fun. Um, so K Rod in the group chat, she comes out here with me all the time, and that's the best way to do it. We have fun out there doing things that we'd enjoy that aren't invasive, you know. And I think what it's doing is it's creating an energy signature based on things that are positive. And I think that's also another thing that kind of gets their attention. Same with doing nothing though. It applies this calmness, this lack of fear, this lack of we're gonna get you. You know, this idea that you're okay with their existence. And I think they find it welcoming. I think you're very right because it is almost every encounter I have with them is when I'm just kind of doing stuff out there. I'm not trying to encounter them. The ways I try to encounter them or embrace them now are by not directly. I try to feed them, but I don't wait for them to come get it. Or the chalkboard where we write symbols back and forth. You know, I leave it so they can do it when they're prepared to. I haven't yet really tried to get them to have a one-on-one meeting. But, you know, so I just put on YouTube, everyone can watch it, episode 2 of Hoodoo Tall 2. And, you know, I broke the sequel up into episodes to make it a little more digestible. And episode 2 is all about the Bigfoots. That what everything's been going on the last couple of years out here and the footprints and that. And, you know, one of the wild things that was finding this pictogram mural that, I mean, there's a painting of a mammoth there. So it's really old. I mean, you know, it's not 500 years old. It's 10,000 years old. And there is a painting of these characters doing this ritual in these wild outfits. And in the back, standing there, is a big white Bigfoot watching them. And, you know, so it's these things aren't new. They didn't migrate here. That's for sure. They range in color and size, and they can disappear right in front of you. That's the weirdest part, man. And if people want to try to have an encounter or at least try and encourage interaction, you know, even at a distance, it's hard to predict. A good example is like the gift table I've been using. I found a bunch of bricks out there, so I stacked these bricks on it, thinking they would see the bricks and stack them in a different way. But instead, when I went back, they stacked a bunch of logs on the roof of the house. It's like, okay, you know, I didn't expect that. I don't see how a team of people could have done that, to be honest. And so I'm noticing it is a lot like quantum physics because quantum physics, when you attempt to study it, gets frustrating because it changes when you observe it. You know, the double slit experiment. Anyone can YouTube double slit experiment. You know, an electron is only a particle when you're looking at it. When you're not looking at it, it's a wave. So it's like, okay, the Bigfoots are very much the same. When you try to interact with them, it changes. It's not. They're not going to act the same way they were. They're not animals like deer, where you can just predict what they're going to do and hunt them that way. Yeah, doing nothing is really good advice. Actually, that's better than most advice people give. Yeah,
It is amazing, isn't it? How if you allow them, like you see all these people out there running around in camouflage and ghillie suits and running through creeks and hiding in trees, all you're doing is stirring them up.
yeah.
You're in their environment and they're wondering what you are up to. And then all of a sudden, if you just sit still, let them get to know you, your smell, your laugh, your voice, your shape, your height, they're going to come right to you.
I think so, and I've even met people out here that intentionally pee.
We're going to have a break here at the bottom of the hour. Hoodoo Tall, Jurgen Hess, Bradshaw Ranch, chasing down monsters. It's always a good time when we have the Hoodoo Tall and his mohawk on this show. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back. All right, we are clear. Good start, brother.
I feel like you and I, this flows so easily. We could do like 6 hours of this without thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Are we on the podcast side still?
Our YouTube and podcast can still hear us.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I got to make sure I say hi to K-Rod. I know she tried to be first in the chat, and I heard she got fourth.
She got fourth.
First in my heart.
Would you look at that? Big shout out to Bombshell Bomber, Gorgeous Larry, and who else joined us here? Scrolling on down. Ozzy, good to see you. And we almost caught up. There we go. We're done. We done.
God. So is there a meetup this year?
Yeah, May 1st to 5th.
Vegas?
At the Orleans.
Oh, dude. Okay. I'm going to try and make that.
Yeah, come on up. We're not doing a live show or anything. We're just getting together and bullshitting for
Perfect.
a couple of days. It's going to be perfect.
Is it a weekend?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, yeah. I'm going to 1st through the 5th?
Yeah, May 1st to 5.
Oh, that's going to be good.
Oh, yeah.
I'll have to see if my tattoo artist is available. Maybe we can get matching tattoos.
Let's do it.
I'd be all about that.
Nice big footprint.
I kind of want to get like a little logo of each weird thing I've encountered, like a little UFO, a little Bigfoot, you know, a little alien head, a little ghost.
Sure.
Just keep kind of going.
Yeah, I'm in. I'm always in for Spink.
And Phil, man, I have both your pictures still framed on each side of my bed. You're with me every night, brother.
Oh, that's romantic.
It is,
Oh,
yeah.
isn't that cute?
No, you're such like an inspiring person to me. You really are. Like when we were in Vegas that first time, and you were going around, and you were tucking the little paintings you've done into like strangers' pockets and stuff like that, just so they'd find it later. I thought that was one of the coolest things I had ever seen. You know, like there were a couple other people that were doing that with crystals, but you can buy those. Like you had to put effort into every one of those things you created, and you were doing good deeds without recognition. And I think that's like one of the most admirable qualities a person can have.
That's a pretty old secret now that everybody knows about it. The secret's out, everybody.
It's only on YouTube, not the radio.
No, that's fine. I do that all the time. I go places, I scribble cartoons, I hand them out to people, and
yeah, I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. I was like, couldn't believe it. I still have one of them. I think it's a little axe, and it's like a 1/2 inch by 2 inches or something. It's tiny.
Yeah, those were the leftovers.
Man. That's why he's dirty. He just does all that dirty stuff, sneaking things into your pocket.
Yeah.
It's like I went to Vegas, and all of a sudden, instead of getting someone pickpocketing me, I ended up with a bunch of weird cartoons in my pockets.
Yeah, you're the first opposite pickpocket I've ever met, actually. We're going to have to think of what you are for being an opposite of a pickpocket. Huh.
A put pocket.
A put pocket. Yeah, you're a put pocket. Absolutely.
Yeah, I've left stuff, and this lady from Northwest Territories messaged me on Instagram. She's like, "Hey, I found this drawing. It was tucked inside of a mailbox under some paper, and I took the paper out, and it fell out." And I'm like, "Oh, cool." And she goes, "Can I paint it?" I go, "Yep, So she painted it up and like in the most
Absolutely.
obscure random place, and then it was just neat that she got back to me about it. So that's cool. I love sharing my artwork.
So it's funny. I'm doing the same thing, but in a much more discreet way. Like, so I work as a brewer now out here in Cottonwood for a kombucha company called Wild Tonic. And so when I'm in there, I'll go over and I'll draw little UFOs on all kinds of random boxes, or on every pallet when it gets wrapped. I draw a big old UFO or a Bigfoot footprint on the side, and they just get sent out. I don't know where they go, but yeah, they're floating around out there somewhere. Yeah.
I do that on my skids at work too. Okay,
Right.
no swearing mode.
All right. Hey, the Gremlin's back. Gremlin's alert, everybody. Gremlin alert. All
He's out of
right. Thank you,
control.
Mama Catherine and Richard, for the super chats. Here we go. Here we go with the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. What's happening with the high street in Arizona? My name is Dave Scott. Our guest is Hoodoo Tall. We're going to bring him back here momentarily. But first, we want to remind all of you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Jurgen Hess, known as Hoodoo Tall, is checking out the high strangeness of Sedona, Arizona, and the Bradshaw Ranch. We are having a great time with him tonight. Right before the break, Hoodoo, we were talking about tracking Bigfoot. Now, when I think Sedona, Arizona, I don't think forests. I don't think trees. Never been there, but to me, isn't that supposed to be desert?
Yeah, well, one of the beauties of Arizona kind of is how diverse the landscape is here. Since I'm up in the mountains of about 4,000 feet, there are a good amount of trees. There's cottonwood trees, juniper trees, manzanitas. You go up another 1,000 feet or so, and you're in the pines, like Flagstaff, stuff like that. So yeah, there is plenty of it out here. If I go down toward Phoenix, yep, flat desert land. But yeah, you kind of get all of it out here, which is kind of nice. And I wanted to also bring up one of the biggest benefits of coming out with the footage that I collected out here has been the collaboration that's come from that. The original video I put out, I wanted to share what was going on out here because the old timer guys that I was friends with said I was getting really good stuff, so I decided to share it. And I didn't think anyone would watch it or care, but the people that have reached out to me and made the effort to come out here and actually participate have made the biggest difference, honestly. Like Karen from MUFON, her and I have been friends for a long time. Like before I was Hoodoo and before she was MUFON, we were out here doing this together. And if people are in the area, I'm going to be presenting for MUFON down in Tucson, June 14th. So you can come down and hang out there for that. But also Monica, this woman Monica from Arizona, she's come out a bunch of times. She started coming up on her own, and she was like, "Hey, I'm getting good stuff too." Without her help, we wouldn't have got hair samples. We got white hair samples from the ranch. And then, other friends, I've been telling them the things that have frustrated me, people I've met that have out here. And they actually have the one answer, that's been puzzling me for a long time. And the Jeep tour drivers, I've become friends with a lot of them, and a lot of them have wild experiences, and they're willing to go out at night with me when most people aren't. And actually, the other cool
experiences.
What's that?
What do you mean by wild experiences?
They have their own Bigfoot encounters and UFO stories and strange phenomena, orbs and even skinwalker stories around here. And it's because they're also like me out there at night. you're not going to have those encounters from home, unfortunately. And one of the really cool things is that if people want to actually go out on a tour with me, they can now. Not officially, but I've checked out all the tours in Sedona, and I like to support anyone I can. I tend to shy away from people when I catch them making stuff up, especially if they're making stuff up to try to seem like a authority figure. I kind of just shy away from that. And honestly, I think the best tour out here is the Outer Dimensions tour. It's called, and it's Sedona Jeep tours. And they go out and you have military night vision, but they go out to the lookout right next to Bradshaw, and you do more than UFOs. You go and try and encounter Bigfoot, and they bring drums, and you have those ceremonies. It is so awesome. And Mason Bradshaw is one of the people that run that company. And so when I talked to him, he said, yeah, if people go on that tour and want me to come along, tell the tour guide, they'll give me a call and I'll come out on the tour with you guys and come hang out and investigate together. So, if people come to Sedona, at least there's kind of a cool way we can officially do something together now.
With so much high strangeness going on, what do you think is happening in that Bradshaw Ranch area? Do you think it's portals? Do you think it's a different dimension? Do you think it's just the Earth having strange areas?
Yeah, so let's go ahead and crack that open. There's a difference in what I'm doing compared to what I've seen other people in this field doing. And that is I am attempting to make this a more realistic thing and a more rational thing. And the way I'm attempting to do that is by getting my PhD on this subject. Now, to do that, I had to go through and get my other degrees in metaphysical science because that's an area where I can put together a dissertation on a subject kind of like this. So I went through all that and got my bachelor's and master's in that, and then worked on my dissertation, which is my specialization is anomalous research. And the difference is that when you take that approach, you need to back up what you claim, and you also need to quote your sources. There's so many people that go reading other people's books and stuff and then try and present that information as it's new in their own. And I don't know, just share your sources so other people can learn the same way you did. I'm very much into kind of helping people along their path because their awareness is different than everyone else's. And the encounters you have are very much related to your level of awareness. And if you're on this journey of becoming enlightened, or if you're trying to mature your soul, you are going to start encountering these things because that's the point of Earth. So hear me out. In my dissertation, in my thesis statement is, I believe all of these paranormal things we encounter are very much related in the sense that they are all fringe effects of the Earth experience infrastructure. So in order for that to be true, you kind of got to buy into this idea that Earth is a place where souls come and incarnate in a physical body to have opportunities to grow and mature, with the goal of being graduating this level of existence and moving up throughout the numerous levels of the layer cake. The UFOs in that regard are the vehicles that souls that have already graduated are using to come and interact with us, hence the infrastructure side of it. Because if you can imagine if you had 7 or 8 billion souls on a planet, each one of those souls trying to ruin their own life and unintentionally because not knowing what to do, that would take a lot of infrastructure to make sense out of and to maintain. And some of that infrastructure is right on the edge of their existence and our 3D world here. And we get to encounter those fringe effects like ghosts. They're an effect of a soul that's left the body but hasn't left the planet yet. The UFO, and I want to talk about portals too. I hear a lot of talk about portals.
Before you jump into the portals thing,
Yeah.
I want to just ask you, how has all of this affected you? as an outdoorsman? Because in order to be a successful researcher, you have to learn your environment. You
Hmm.
have to know where to go, where not to go. Like, for instance, my area, I had to learn about animal scat. I had to learn about black bears, grizzly bears. What's the difference? When a moose is around, how do you act? You get the hell out of the way.
Right.
I mean, you have to learn your environment. How did you have to learn yourself for your environment in order to have success for your investigation?
Yeah, actually, that was something I didn't realize until somebody much smarter than me was willing to talk to me, honestly, and that was Clifford Mahooty. He was a Zuni Elder. He was on Ancient Aliens a bunch of times. You can look up talks that he's given on YouTube. Unfortunately, he passed away a few months after we talked, but Tom Dongo gave me the chance to talk to Cliff. And it was interesting because Tom said, Cliff doesn't like talking. He's going to come to breakfast with us. Don't expect him to say much. And one of the first things Cliff said to me was, just so you know, everyone you meet is a total idiot. And I was like, dang, like he just called me an idiot. Like, okay. I was like, so I better say something not idiotic if I want this guy to talk. And I thought for a while and then slowly started saying things, and Cliff took to it and we started chatting, and then you couldn't keep the guy quiet, and that was awesome. And so what he taught me was what his grandfathers taught him when he grew up in the tribe. So he grew up in a tribe, and then when he got older, went out to what he called the white world and got an education in a college. But initially, he learned on the land. And he said when he was about 8 or 9 years old, his grandfather said, "You got enough water for a couple days?" He said, "Yep." He said, "Okay, I want you to go sit on that mountain up there." And he said, "Okay." And he went and he said, "Come back in 3 days." So Cliff, as a child, went up there and sat up on this mountainside for 3 days and came back down. His grandfather asked him, "All right, what did you see?" And Cliff was like, "Was I supposed to be looking for something? Like, what do you mean? What did I see?" And his grandfather asked him, "Just tell me what you saw." And Cliff sat there and he started thinking. He said, "Well, in the morning, the deer, they come walking through over there, and in the evening, they go out over here. And at this time of day, the birds do that." And he started saying all the things he observed, and his grandfather said, "That's exactly what you were supposed to be doing." And the funny thing about Cliff, when we got to the restaurant, there was only one car in the parking lot. It was an old Jeep Cherokee, a white one. There was no one in it. I walked into the restaurant. There was nobody in there. Cliff wasn't there. 15 minutes later, Cliff walks in the restaurant. That was his white Jeep Cherokee. He was sitting in the back seat of it because he told me later. He said, "I watched you for 10 minutes before I came in. I saw how you walked, how you act." So not only does he do it in nature, this guy does that to people. Like, I was pretty impressed. And from that time, that's exactly what I started doing. I started spending time quietly out there. And wintertime when there's snow, really easy to track animals. But I had to learn. I got a job as a ranch hand when I moved out here. That helped a lot, learning a lot of the tracks that are, pretty familiar but look strange in mud or when they're double steps, like cows and horses. And we had a pig and, rabbits. And all those are out here for the most part. And so it was a matter of committing to spending time out there listening, because you spend months out there listening to what's normally there. When something abnormal shows up, you know it right away. Right away. Even if a coyote is acting weird one night, like happened the other night, I knew something was wrong. Coyotes don't act like that. And the next day I went to check what was going on in that part of the property, and there's something new on the ranch. uh, it's bipedal. It has cat-like paws for feet, and they measure 9 inches across. I mean, we looked up cat paws. The largest cat paws are tigers, which are 8 to 9 inches. So, I mean, it's not a mountain lion, and it doesn't necessarily walk like mountain lions walk. And I found those tracks multiple spots around the property over a couple weeks. And that one actually kind of freaked me out a little bit. I didn't know if I was too keen on seeing that thing in the middle of the night. I don't know how tall it is. I don't, I don't know much, but I know it's there, and it was harassing the heck out of a coyote that night. I don't know if you ever heard a coyote screaming. It's terrifying. Yeah. And it was just one. Just the
Habits,
one.
it's horrible.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. Like you can tell, and no other coyotes were coming to help it. It was on its own, screaming for 20 to 30 minutes, and we left, and it was still screaming. I was a little intimidated to go over there at night without any lights or anything like that. But yeah, and you know what's funny is I thought about that the other day because Tom told me the ranch changed him a lot spending time there, and I was like, you know, it'd be funny. I should go back and watch the first episode of Spaced Out Radio I did. And then come back like years later and see. I don't know. Maybe it has. I'm sure it's changed me in some way. I haven't gained any superpowers. That'd be cool. It's gotten me more in tune with energy, how to feel it, how to read it, how to work with it. And plus, you know, getting my education in metaphysical science revolves a lot around energy and that type of work. So I have things at the ranch now that I'm projects that I wouldn't have had a couple years ago. Like I'm building a stone circle and I'm using as large as stones as I can find to move. I'm hoping that through frustration comes ingenuity and I can figure out how to move. My biggest stone now is the one at the southern point of the circle. It weighs a good 250, 300 pounds. I moved it by hand with no tools or nothing. It wasn't easy, but I got it there. But the circle is activated. I've been testing it with dowsing rods. And now, when you walk into it, the second you cross into that circle, the rods ping to the side. So it has affected the land. And I made it specifically to create a new interaction point because a lot of people have seen the videos online and stuff, and more people go to the ranch. And now they tend to sabotage the experiments I have out there. So I've had to move my active stuff off the property a bit.
Well, let's talk about that because as Bradshaw Ranch has become synonymous with Skinwalker Ranch and other ranches that are out there, it has become a tourist attraction, a must-see place for people into the weird and strange. How has I want you, outside of people sabotaging your experiments, how has the increase in population in that area with tourism and other traffic affected what you do?
So I've noticed a slight effect in my day to day. I noticed that they were less engaging. The entities, whether they're Bigfoots or dinosaurs, they're being less engaging. And so recently, this woman named Suzanne, and there's the video of this is at the end of episode 2 that people can go watch. So some, I mean, I call them witches lovingly, but some channelers, psychics from Minnesota came out and they wanted me to take them to the ranch. You know, they were on a Jeep tour. They were talking, and the Jeep tour lady said, "Let's go. I know that guy. We can go." So we went all together. And so we're walking around the ranch a bit during the day, and this woman said she was a channeler. And I'm all about that kind of stuff. I just like people to back up their claims. So I didn't say anything. I just listened to what she has to say. As we're walking around during the day, though, this woman is calling out very specific things she has no right knowing, even about me in particular. And she wasn't saying it was me, but she was saying very odd things. And I was like, oh my, this woman is a channeler. She can really do this. And as the sun set, we were sitting around in some chairs watching the sky, and she suddenly said, wow, I've never channeled Bigfoots before, but they're here. Do you want to talk to them? Yeah, I mean, yeah. So she started channeling the Bigfoots and these other entities. And the one thing she said was she actually started crying. And she said they're getting very sad because people are coming here and taking the energy away for themselves without giving back. And that's exactly when she said it hit home. I was like, yeah, that's what's happening. Because a lot of people come out there and try to gain something for themselves from this energy at the ranch without an attempt to repay that. And it kind of depletes the place, it seems like. And, I wouldn't have thought of that on my own, but when she said it, it sure seemed to line up kind of with what was happening. So that's another reason I've been trying to use what I know now to make locations on the property pure high energy. That's what the stone circle is. It's my new place of interaction with these things. And she knew the circle. So this one, I showed her my old gift location, and she was like, "This is wrong." She started pointing. She's like, "This direction," and with her two hands, she pointed directly where my circle is and directly where my altar to Gaia is. And I was like, "Oh, this is really weird." She said, "You need to be moving in that direction." She said, "The lines out here are broken. You need to fix them." And so I've been trying to clean the place up a bit. There's like a bunch of big size rocks that were, scattered everywhere, so it felt like chaos. So I collected them and made a big spiral that we can walk now. And that kind of thing seems to be kind of bringing the energy back and helping it a bit. But yeah, the tourism doesn't help. If you go there, it isn't Disneyland for the paranormal. It's a place on the planet where really weird stuff happens, and it's not for everyone. And you need to be careful when you go there. Uh, be respectful of the place and the things there, and you'll be fine. Um, but people go there to try to prove that they have special abilities or that they themselves are special, and I think that's what seems to be depleting it.
The beautiful part about our two areas is we up here where I live, there's not a lot of people who go out there.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people who know the roads. Not a lot of people who know that the areas even exist, let alone the hunters who go out there looking for game, but they don't know that they're right in Sasquatch territory.
Yeah.
They're naive about it. And when you live in a town of 2,500 like I do, it's very easy to get the job done without that type of contamination that you have to go through down there. How often, like let me ask you this, if you have a long weekend where there's a lot of tourism there and everybody's playing the role of psychic and channeler and UFO summoner, how long do you have to wait before that contamination dissipates and you could get your research area back to normal? We got about 2 minutes.
I don't, because I can go when they're not. They're pretty predictable. They're gonna go in the daytime or right at sunset. Most people don't stay after the dark. I'm not afraid to go in there at 1 a.m. with nothing and go snooping around. So what I do is I go check, and if there's people there, I either hold off. If I really want to go in, I'll go say hello, just so they don't think I'm Bigfoot walking around on the hillsides next to them. But after a long weekend, you're going to get like 10 groups of people at least taking the road to the end. Whether they know the Bradshaw Ranch is there, they still show up at the ranch. And the good thing for me is that they usually leave pretty quickly. So that I've had that benefit. But the one thing I do notice though is the uptick in people that go down to the house and cause more damage. In the last 2 years, that's happened a bunch. There's more spray paint up now, more broken things. And that's really the only bummer. I don't really mind other people going because part of my experiment is bringing other people there. This phenomena reacts to the people that are there themselves. So if you bring a good core group of people, you're going to have a wild experience. And if you bring some people that are negative or, trying to hunt this thing, they're not even going to show up, at least out here. It could be different in other spots, but it's definitely proven over and over and over again to be true. Just like trail cameras, they don't work, but the Bigfoots know they're there and they just don't go in that part of the property anymore. And people have wondered why that is, and I've tried to study as much as I can. So birds have what's called the cry-4 protein in their eyeball. This lets birds physically see the Earth's magnetic field, and that's how they migrate. I've always thought maybe they could sense it or knew they could sense it. But no, birds can actually see the magnetic field. So, to me, it is not a far stretch to think that a higher level being could also simply have the cry-4 protein in their eye. And if you put a trail camera out, they can see it from half a mile away, and they just don't go there. So the only advice I have for trail cams is you can use them to corral the phenomena into one part of the property. put them in that area. Now they're not going to be over there, so they're probably going to be in this place.
We have about 10 seconds right there. So what I'm going to do here is get you to hold on. We're going to go to break at the top of the hour where Hoodoo Tall, Jurgen Hess, is going to join us for the next hour on Spaced Out Radio, talking about Bradshaw Ranch in Sedona, Arizona, the UFOs, the Bigfoot, the dinosaurs. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott. All right, we are clear. I'm going to turn things over to the dirty one and take about 5.5 minute break. Go get him, dirty.
Okay, that's really funny because there's a bar in the Bradshaw house that looks just like that.
Is there a man in black, a gray alien, and a Sasquatch having wobblies in there?
Well, when I'm in there behind the bar, I like to pretend they're there.
Yeah.
That's so great, dude.
I a couple buddies of mine, I go for chicken wings at the pub across the street from my house, and the mad scientist that works in the back. Aaron, if you're listening, thanks for all the wobblies and all the super burning death wings. He makes some super awesome hot wings. They're relatively painful. They're tasty now, but painful the next day.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Anyways, he's like, "Can you do me a St. Patty's drawing?" So I've whipped up 2 for him. Here's the other one from the night before.
I like that
because the man in black works for the bureau, and they allow him to, instead of having the purple tie, the black and purple clothing, he's 1 day a year he's allowed to switch up the colors. So
that's it.
Pick St. Patty's Day.
Love it, dude. That's great.
But hey, you mentioned something about a white Sasquatch fluff or fur or something. You're not going for a whiz or anything, are you?
What's that?
I got you for 3 more minutes or whatever.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, we got white hair samples from the ranch.
Okay, cool. I was gonna say, so I live in Alberta, whatever, and there's a small, it's like a cluster of houses and some farms. There's probably more dogs and cats than there are people, but it's called Star, Alberta, and I'm allowed to tell this story because my friend gave me permission years ago. Anyways, her and her sister, they used to live at this farmhouse, and their dad went to town. Bob, they went to town one day, or he went to town, and they were sitting in the house, and they heard this huge crash on the side of the house, and they thought someone had driven into the side of the house, and they went outside, and this is her words and her sister's words. They said that they seen an albino. I'm just gonna say it as she explained it: an albino Sasquatch and a small albino child Sasquatch walking down the driveway. So when you mentioned the white fur, that's the first thing I thought of.
Yeah, and the one that Linda Bradshaw constantly encountered on the ranch was white and about 6.5 feet tall. But she also had to encounter with it when I was visibly pregnant. So it wasn't a juvenile. And the drawing, the old painting we found it's a white Bigfoot they painted. But yeah, also if you think about it too, and in the Himalayas and stuff where they call it a Yeti, those are often reported as being white.
Yeah, I've always wondered about the Yeti because it seemed like when I was younger, there was always stories of Yetis, and then it was like, oh,
the abominable snowman, right?
Yeah, the abominable snowman, and these Tibetan monks got a skull of a Yeti, and
yeah,
I don't know. I've tried to Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think it's just the same creature, just appearing in different parts of the world. And maybe they're keen enough that if they do come in different colors, maybe the white ones are just more adaptable to snowy areas and just go there more often. But they certainly seem to be coming out here too, which is really weird. They would stick out here.
Well, even in Alberta, I mean, Alberta's weird because it's vast. There's flatlands and badlands and forests and mountains and everything and tundra. But I mean, Star, Alberta is kind of in the middle of Alberta, which is mostly flat. There's not a lot of trees around there. And
Right.
like my friend had told me this. I've known her since we were 16, so that's a long time.
Yeah, I don't think she's lying.
But she's never. She told me this years before I was really interested in like
Right.
Sasquatch cryptid weirdness and everything. So
Yeah. It's they're one of the channeler people told me that the white ones are like higher level than the brown ones. But I don't really have any way to validate that. I don't know. I've heard other people tell me the taller ones are the elders, and so I hear a lot of lore, but lore doesn't get me places. I take the lore in so that if I see a result in the field, I can match up to a story. That's helpful. But I can't go out into the field thinking like the white one means it's this, because it's probably wrong. We don't know what these things are.
it's true.
And they're tricky.
It's I gotta feed the cats for snacks. Jurgen,
All right.
you're the best in the world. I'll keep in touch.
All right, buddy.
Thanks,
That's
Dave.
why
Love you. Bye.
Extra treats for Blob. The rest of the
Blob's
cats.
ghost.
We love you, buddy. Big thank you tonight to Mama Catherine and Richard for the super chats tonight. Greatly appreciate the love. Who is Spaced Out Radio? I don't know. Runa, how you doing, buddy? And we got about 15 seconds left, my friend. And 3 seconds. Here we go with the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We're talking to Hoodoo Tall, the legends around Bradshaw Ranch in Sedona, Arizona. It's a good one tonight. So thank you so much for tuning us in wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Theomancy. Theomancy is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. All right, we have Hoodoo Tall, Jurgen Hess, chasing around the monsters of Bradshaw Ranch. And I know we've talked a lot about Bigfoot here in the last little bit, but I want to get into UFOs and aliens for a little bit, because there have been alleged alien sightings in that area wandering around. Have you ever had an encounter?
Boy. Encounters, yeah. Visible sighting of a creature. No, I don't think so. But I don't think we're supposed to. I mean, they're smarter than us. They can evade us pretty easily. However, I've found footprints that I really cannot describe other than some little alien creature. They're three-toed, about 2 inches wide, 2 inches long, but a 42-inch gait, and had a child with it because it was a smaller set that weren't quite as deep. And then, so we've been seeing craft in the sky a lot. And then recently, from a distance, we would see what looked like craft landing near Bradshaw. And I would go to the ranch, and I didn't really see anything out of the ordinary, but I decided, all right, well, I need to start expanding a bit. And so I started going through all the hillsides around the ranch. And oddly enough, there is a spot there where I'm pretty convinced that it's where a UFO has landed. Now, I've brought in a bunch of people there to look at it with me because I need those opinions. But the weird thing is there's a burn circle, and it's up on it's not on the hilltop. There's two hilltops and it's on the lower one. And so there was a tree, and I took a tape measure and measured everything. So the tree that burned down, the trunk is 6 feet in diameter. So it's quite a big tree. It is burned to the ground. I mean, there's, only a few inches of stump left. The burn circle is 26 feet by 28 feet. So almost a perfect circle, slightly oval. Now within the circle are the remnants of the tree. They are all the same. It's really weird. They're evenly distributed within the circle, and they're all tiny little pieces of charred wood. I mean, it had to burn really hot. They're all about an inch cubic. Any larger parts of the tree that remain are charred and have all been pushed to the edge of the circle. And so when I first found it, and we have pictures and videos of all this stuff. So when I first found it, it was very odd to see a tree like that had burned down and such a round shape and everything. But I was like, okay, possibly lightning could do this. So first I checked the ground for what's called fulgurite, which forms when lightning strikes the ground. I didn't see any fulgurite. But the weird thing is, there's another tree adjacent to this one. Now, this other tree is about the same size, has a lot of dead branches that stick out, and these dead branches come right up to the perimeter of the burn circle. But these branches aren't even charred or burned or anything. There's no mark of fire on the tree that is next to the one that burned down. And so that really stuck out as being odd to me. I was like, okay, fire can't do that. Fire can't decide, not that tree. So that was really kind of odd. And so we brought, I went back about a month later, and the burn circle had extreme growth in it. Like 1.5 foot tall weeds growing only in the circle. And then we came back a third time with a Geiger counter. And in the circle, it measured 0.022. The baseline outside the circle is 0.003. So, I mean, pushing with 10 times more, quite a bit more in the circle than outside of the circle. Now, the other odd thing about that particular hillside is that's the only one at the ranch where I can find these really quite incredible calcite crystal clusters. Along with calcite crystal, there are large outcroppings of raw selenite on that hillside, which is kind of convenient because selenite is used for cleansing energy. So the ranch is actually constantly being cleansed by the hill next to it. And we've even found some of the crystals inside of the burn circle, which was kind of neat. But that thing is really, really bizarre. I have never seen anything like it. And I also don't think the crystals are to be ignored. I go over this in my dissertation, which will obviously be public. It's getting peer reviewed right now. So one thing I've been doing since I've been out here is collecting crystals. And my favorite place to go is a place called Payson, Arizona. And just outside of Payson, quartz formed as hard as a diamond. So they call them Payson diamonds. This happens in another place called Herkimer. And if you go to crystal shops or online, you can also quite often find Herkimer diamonds. So the one thing I realized when I was doing this was that Payson is about 55 miles from here. And Herkimer is about that from the Hudson River Valley. Now, the Hudson River Valley has just about every phenomena occurring there that's occurring here. You know, if you get into it, man, there's Bigfoots, there's UFOs, there's ghosts, there's all kinds of stuff out there. And in the dissertation, I at least make the note of it that I don't think that should be overlooked. And this is kind of a call for help too from anyone out there, because a collective that does a better job in finding other places on the planet where quartz is formed as hard as a diamond and looking within a radius of that area to see if it's also a hot spot like here. Now, why would it be? Energetically, if you think about it, quartz obviously produces an energetic signature, piezoelectric effect. And there's these vortexes in Sedona. I don't know that anyone's checked for vortexes in the Hudson River Valley, but there is a massive amount of energy going up from the earth here. Now, as it goes up above the earth, it's going to interact, it's going to hit these other belts or things around the earth, like the Van Allen belts or the atmosphere. There's a lot of things around the earth. And it could very well be interacting with, say, a Van Allen belt, for lack of a better thing to pick, and maybe creating a pockmark, maybe pulling down on one of those things above the earth. Now, maybe these craft they use are just going to those pockmarks as a navigation, just because that's kind of how they work. Maybe we don't understand the reason, but maybe that is part of the functionality of the craft. Maybe that's why so many of them are visible here. Because the weird thing about UFOs, so I hear a lot of talk about portals in Sedona. And when it comes down to it, I think people are just saying it because things appear here and they don't know how to describe it. So they say, well, there's portals. It's like, okay, well, that's a big jump to make. Can you describe what you mean by portal? Is there like a round doorway opening up these things we're walking through? Because that's not happening. And when you get down to it, a portal is a gateway, right, between somewhere else and here. And as much as people don't want to think this way, that's what a UFO is. Among other things, a UFO is much more than that. But a UFO is the portal. It's the portal that these beings use to go from where they are to here. Now, look at even as simple as down to what Bob Lazar said and describing how the craft work. They manipulate gravity and they can focus on a point in space and pull that to them, and they go back and travel with it. That's a portal, right? I mean, that's what a portal is, a hole in space-time. And so when people say there are portals in Sedona, absolutely there are. You can see them in the sky. Now, I've heard UFO tour people say that there is a portal in one part of the sky that all the craft fly into. And as I just did the data on it, what they're talking about is the shadow of the Earth. That's when you lose luminosity. So it's easy to say, yeah, a lot of them disappear there. It seems that the craft themselves are the portals, because beings are using those craft to travel from their dimension to ours. And the craft aren't nuts and bolts. This is going to be, now, like I said, I really like to stick with things I can back up, but let's go down a rabbit hole real quick, because here's something that will sit right with a few people whose level of awareness is, slightly advanced. It might take other people a while to process this, but let's talk about how UFOs are made. Now, man, I have got the slightest glimpse of it only, and that glimpse took me a long time to process. But they aren't made in the way we think cars and other things are made. If you were to see it without much to relate it to, you would think they're being grown on trees. Now, it sounds stupid, but think about it in a different way now. 3D printing is something we're finally getting a hold of. So let's say you had 3D printing to its maximum capability. You're not going to do what we do. You're not going to go mine ore and refine that ore, create something to put into a 3D printer and then print your product. what you would do is you'd have a 3D printer that has, say, lack of a better word, tubes that go down into the ground to search for the ore. So you have this machine with a collection of tubes that go into the ground to search for the ore. They bring it up. In the process of coming up through the main shaft, it gets, whatever done needs to be done to it. If it needs to be processed or machined, that process happens, purified, whatever. And then it goes out into more individualized sections, which happen to look like branches, where the end product at the end of that branch is being printed. And then they're kind of taken from there and used. So it isn't a tree. It's a giant machine that makes UFOs. But if we just saw it at a glimpse, you're like, holy smoke, they grow these things on trees. So the UFOs themselves, I've been on them a couple times, man, and I don't know, I can't remember it. There's 3 times when I've been picked up at night and taken somewhere, and I was allowed to remember it, but I don't remember the vehicle they used. It was as interesting as a taxi cab would be if somebody was driving you down the Las Vegas Strip. How well are you going to remember the cab you were in? You're like, I didn't care about that at the time. It wasn't really on my mind.
Let me ask you.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, what kind of craft are you seeing out there?
95% of what you see are gigantic balls of light. They're usually amber in color. They move silently, various speeds. They change direction really quickly. Use every UFO or satellite tracker you can. I highly recommend people do that because that's the first thing people say. And I want them to see it's not satellites. I mean, use a tracker. They're not satellites. And aside from that, the best close-up I've seen was when a cloaked craft kept flying by. Gosh, it got under 1,000 feet at one point, and it was so weird. It had a boomerang shape, but it was bending light around itself. So with military night vision, you could see it. And you could see it glowing, and you could see it come by. I mean, this thing came by 8 or 9 times. It wasn't like once or twice. It was really bizarre. And so with night vision, you can see it. And then I started running tests because it was coming by so frequently. So what I'd do is, as it was coming, as I saw it approaching, I would watch it with night vision, and then take the night vision down and back and down. So when you remove your night vision, there was absolutely nothing visible. It was completely bending light around it, and you could not see it even when it was directly above my head. I couldn't see it. So what I did the next time it came by is when it got above my head, I took the goggles down and hit it with a green laser pointer. And that showed us what was happening. Because when the green laser hit it, it absorbed it and bent it around the craft. And this thing had green waves of light going over it. Almost like if you shine a laser at a water bottle or a car headlight or something. The refraction was there. It was absorbing it. It was like one of the more magical things I think I've ever seen. And that's not a plane. The whole New Jersey drone thing was kind of interesting. Here's the one good thing about it is that people are going to look at the sky more now. So much of that footage was just airplanes, and it's tricky because when an airplane is flying directly at you, its headlights are so bright that you can't see the strobes. So it looks like this big bright object coming near you. And then when it gets close enough, the headlights kind of go out of your eyesight and suddenly it looks like a plane because it is a plane. And so a lot of those videos were unfortunately that. There was some weird stuff going on, but most of it were drones. They weren't ET. They were drones. I did hear that there was some missing nuclear material, and a lot of the drones were looking for that. But I don't know. That's just rumor.
Too.
Yeah.
I had heard to. But the fact is, it's an active area where many people believe that there is some sort of portal over top or dimensional door over top of Sedona that just allows these craft in. How often is this happening? How often is it nightly? Is it something that you and I could go out there right now and see craft kind of flying around?
Absolutely. Yeah. So clouds will ruin your night. If you have clouds out, the only luck you're going to have is if one comes in real low. And that can happen, and it can happen late at night too, but the best time to see them is 2 hours after sunset, 2 hours before sunrise. Now the reason that is because even though the sun is below the horizon, it's still shining up into the sky. So metallic objects above us are going to reflect light even if they're not luminous. And that's what gives us the ability to see a lot of these objects in our atmosphere out here. So when you lose that window, now you're left with only things that are actually giving off light, self-luminous objects. And that is when you get a chance to actually see some of the more phenomenal light shows, I guess. Like some of the things we've seen, and these were actually on camp trips. And once again, we were not trying to contact UFOs. I mean, honestly, back then we were drinking beers around a campfire because we wanted to just be up and aware and, see if anything would happen. So we weren't paying attention. And they went to extra effort to make sure we noticed them. And the one that always really kind of freaked me out was it showed up over the tree near our campsite twice. And it had so many lights that it looked like as many lights as a firework going off. But it wasn't a firework though. It was, it had a shape to it. And it was just like covered in LEDs, but everywhere, all over. And it was multicolored and it lit them all up at once. And then about 2 hours later, it did again. And we all saw it. I mean, that thing just, like I said, after that, those people didn't come camping again after that one. I can't blame them. Like, this isn't for everyone. And to be really honest, it's not going to matter at the end of the day with what is important to us in our lives. Yes, it's fun to talk about and it's fun to research, but it's not what any of us I don't think, are supposed to dedicate our whole life to. There's that aspect of our own personal growth. This is a part of that growth, but recently, John Lear, my mentor, passed away a couple of years ago now, and I thought I'd feel alone after that, but before he died, he passed me off to kind of someone who was his mentor, which sounds weird, but it's a guy who John found him to be the only genuine person, the only one telling the actual truth. And this guy has been good enough to, continue those conversations with me when I have questions that no one can answer. And I'm very grateful for him. His name is Lou Baldwin. And if people want to know some of the things about UFOs, he has books. And his book, UFOs in the Year of the Dragon, talks about his experiences growing up and when our military recruited him to study UFOs for them. It's phenomenal. And, everything he's told me holds up in the field too. And one of the things he talks about, which I can't say I've experienced, is the size difference from the outside of a craft to the inside. And, he said it doesn't matter how big that thing is on the outside. It could be 10 feet across. When you go in it, it's going to be the size of an airplane hangar in there. Because that's just how they work. The other interesting thing he did say about them was that they have their own soul. Now, he said it's not a human soul. He said we're not going to evolve to the point where we inhabit a UFO for our body. He said these souls are entirely different than ours. But it kind of made sense. Like when you think about what we're doing with AI, right? Self-driving. Let's take a look at self-driving. We're trying to develop an AI that can drive the car for us. Well, these beings figured out how to do it to an extent that AI is sentient. it has its own way of thinking, and that's what runs the UFO craft. He said, and they have a lot of
Hold on right there because we are going to go to break. Final half hour with Hoodoo Tall next before hour 3.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
All right, we are clear, buddy.
I'm liking my new red chair.
That is nice.
It's like $100 at a thrift shop. I was like, I'm going to base my whole room around this chair now because I have to have it. Yeah, what do you think? UFOs are portals?
I never really thought about that, bro.
I didn't either, honestly, until it was kind of made obvious to me, and I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, they're taking people from one dimension to another, and that's what a portal is. So it's a room built around a portal, essentially. Can't wait to have my own.
Yeah, I'd like.
That's the motivation for graduation. So while we're on just the on the podcast side, there was something pretty interesting recently about Lou Baldwin. So this guy's like one of my favorite authors, and everything he's written that I read, like everything, he helps make everything make sense. And I was clearing out some old Facebook messages. It was like 2 years old. It was before I moved out here. And I wasn't even sure who the person was. And I opened the message, and it was a screenshot of a comment on Facebook from Lou Baldwin. Well, that's weird. And I looked at it, and this is a comment specifically about me. And I was like, what the heck? I was like, what? Hold on. So I read it, and it says me by name, Jurgen. And he said, you've been having more ET contact since you were young than everyone else. And he said, that's why you're going to dedicate your life to it, because you want more. And I was like, holy crap, since then I've literally moved here and kind of dedicated a lot of my life to it. He called that shot pretty well. And so I after I saw it, I kind of messaged him a bit. And I was like, hey, Lou, I'm just coming across this now, And I said, is it bad that I want more? It's not that I wanted more. I wanted to just live a regular life, and that wasn't working. And this stuff was working.
Oh, yeah, we all did, brother.
Yeah.
I'm saying, you think I like ending my happily boring life?
I still want a boring life, man. I can't have it. But so what Lou told me now, when I asked him, I said, is it bad that I want more? Now, because my goal isn't to become a figure in this community. My goal isn't to make money off of this stuff. My goal is to just share the evidence I've been collecting in my field work to get my PhD. And so when I asked Lou, is it bad that I wanted more? He said, yeah. He said, you're on Earth to live an Earth life. So when you're here, don't be focused the whole time about what happens next or what happened before this or what else exists. He said, do the Earth stuff, but he said, try and focus on having more fun. I was like, really? I was like, oh, dang. I almost thought like I'd get in trouble when I died. They'd be like, man, we sent you there to learn and you had so much fun when you were there. I was like, okay, cool. Like, I don't need to. I was having too much fun.
Having fun on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But what a jerk. He had fun down there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There was another time when I woke up one morning before I moved out here, and everything felt off, man. couldn't hardly think. I put 2 different shoes on. And, you know, Lou Baldwin created a private Facebook group for a bunch of us. And Lou posted in that group that morning, hey, anyone remember what happened last night? So a bunch of us are like, oh, what happened? I said, no, I don't remember, but man, I was messed up this morning. And he said, I took a few of you on a little trip last night, but I want to see if any of you remember it. Then I'll tell you guys what happened. And I said, I don't think I was there. I don't remember anything. And Lou said, well, there's a few people in this group that are set to graduate Earth after this. So I took them on a little trip so they could see some of the other places they have as options when they're done here. So other places within our solar system. And so it went all day. Nobody could remember. And then he let us know what happened. He said I was there, but he said that he took us on, the UFO was, the best way to describe it, a log of light. He said it was about 8 inches in diameter, about 20 feet long. We all straddled it. When we did, it enveloped us in this light and energy and whipped us off. And he went and took us around.
Right.
And,
we're going to come back here in a couple seconds here.
Yep.
Mama Catherine and Richard for the super chats. Try and get some audience questions as well. Here we go. Reminder to all of you that if you missed portions of this show or others, always check out our archives. They're always free on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Final time tonight, we talked to Hoodoo Tall, hanging on out, breaking down what's happening at the ranch in Arizona, Sedona's Bradshaw Ranch. You definitely want to check it on out if you're ever in that area, because there's some freaky things that happen there. Hoodoo, how you doing?
Couldn't be better, that's for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's another thing I've kind of learned in being like very boots on the ground approach to this, and it's kind of some advice I want to give to other people out there interested in the subject. And it's also something that John Laird taught me. And it was kind of how do you decipher who to listen to? You know, I choose to try to talk about things that I can just show you with pictures and videos, because then that's it. I don't want you to have to think like, believe me because I said so. I think that's very bizarre. And the problem in this field is there are no actual experts. You know, I've heard so many people say they're a UFO expert, and I'm like, well, do you have one? Because can you imagine if I said I was a Corvette expert, but I'd never owned one or driven one? Like, that's crazy to me. So, I mean, I get it. You've read a lot of reports, but you're not an expert on UFOs. You might be an expert on UFO reports. So what happens is people come into this field specifically for attention or to make themselves seem better than the average person. And I just want people to take those kind of things with a grain of salt. So what I've seen is like somebody will have a Bigfoot experience, and then they'll say like, oh, I'm going to just do Bigfoot stuff now, and that's it. That's cool. But they don't have more than that initial experience. So they need to really start stretching that one experience out, or just flat out making new stuff up. And the way you can tell when they're making stuff up is it usually comes back around to where they have to announce that there's some authority figure or representative of Earth. That one really trips me out. I hear that a lot. People claim that they are an ambassador for Earth to the Galactic Federation, so I need to listen to everything they say. And granted, I was listening to what they said in the first place. But when people can't, and if you question them on it, if they're truthful, they'll answer your questions. If they're not truthful, they'll get very defensive and yell at you. And so I just want people to keep that in mind. You should be able to ask people questions on how they became an authority figure in any subject. And self-appointed authority figures usually don't pan out so well.
You know, you bring up a good point. I've talked to my audience a number of times about this, that in this field of ufology, and I'm just focusing on our field here, whether it's
Yeah.
ufology, cryptids, or paranormal, there's an addiction to a high percentage of people here who have an addiction to self-titling.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God.
Many fake journalists there are in this field. You know, I see them on television shows, I see them on documentaries. They've never been a journalist in their life, but they're trying to give themselves credibility. UFO experts, that's another one. Or
Yeah.
the so-called scientists looking for Bigfoot, and here they're using their own thoughts, their own belief system
Right.
as scientific fact. We see it all over in this field, and I'm not sure why we just can't accept the experience for what it is. If you have an experience where you see Sasquatch disappear right in front of you, or a full body apparition disappear right in front of you, that's a wonderful experience to build on. That
Yeah.
is what, if you're a true journalist or a true scientist, you know that's a lead.
Right.
That is a lead to follow, and
Yeah.
leads don't happen often.
Right. Yeah. And you know what's funny is I touch on that in my dissertation actually, and that part of the reason I'm doing what I'm doing, and in that respect, I mean, you know, there's a lot of people in this field that have doctor in front of their name. But what is their PhD in? Nothing related to this field. So, okay, I'm actually getting my PhD in this field so that when people question me on it, I can say, you know, well, read my dissertation. It has the photos. You know, I'm talking about interacting with Bigfoots. Well, I'm sharing the way I chose to interact with them and showing you the evidence I gathered from that. Same with UFOs, same with ghosts. If you don't think my method is any good, well, it got all that evidence. Or if you think your method is better, share it with me, but also share the evidence your method collected. And so I think if we can collect evidence and normalize this, we can get more people to talk about it, because what happens now is there is a double trauma that occurs. You know, I've had experiences where I was picked up at night and I wanted more than anything to talk to someone about it the next day, because it's traumatizing. It's very jarring, and you got to get up and go to work. So the problem is you have that traumatic experience, you talk to somebody about it, and then you're ridiculed and bullied, and you have another traumatic experience from it. So these people aren't going to talk about it. So I'm trying to legitimize it, back up everything that I've done so that you can't argue with what I'm saying. A lot of the Bigfoot people make these claims, right? And you're like, okay, well, can you prove that? And they're like, no. And it's like, well, okay, you know, we need to, can't we just, I'm just going to be this one brick of a solid foundation. And hopefully, you know, other people want to do it too. You can't just have one. It needs to be collective. And
It's funny you say that, because I spoke at a Bigfoot conference here in British Columbia last year, and I spoke on day 2, and it was on native land, and there were a lot of First Nations people there, and you had these so-called scientists come in, you know, and absolutely trouncing them. Not the people in general, but trouncing the story of Bigfoot being interdimensional, or Bigfoot being able to cross into telepathy, or Bigfoot being able to cross into aliens, or whatever it may be. They were just trouncing the ideas. And these are people who have literally grown and seen these creatures and heard the stories for centuries,
right,
you know. And I went up there the next day, and I was so, I don't want to say offended by it, but it irked me.
yeah,
And when I was on stage, I kept emphasizing to these so-called scientists, we don't know what it is.
Right, right.
We don't have a body. We don't have urine samples. We don't have, there are a few DNA samples out there. So basically, we are judging an entire research on a growing creature on dermal ridges on footprints.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, come on. It's
right.
Yeah. It's a bummer because you can't, like, here's what I see, and here's why I have trouble getting the opportunity to be a presenter at a lot of these conferences. Because I'm going up there and laying down the truth of how I collected this evidence and where I collected it.
Mm-hmm.
I have a large collection of evidence now, and so what I say about it conflicts with a lot of the made up stuff that's kind of been made up and perpetuated for so long in this industry that it's kind of like settled in as like normal, but it's all made up stuff. And so when I conflict that, the people who have anointed themselves of authority figures over that made up story get really pissed. Yet they can't back up anything they're saying. And I'm just saying, you won't let me share what I can back up because it goes against what you're making up. And that's where I'm at with this. So, I don't know that I'll ever be allowed to present at any of those conferences or anything like that. I've emailed a couple and they're just like, no. Like, I'll keep trying. But yeah, I find it real weird that they don't give everyone a chance. It's like, if what you're going to say fits in with what we think, we'll let you talk. I was like, it kind of goes against the whole thing.
I agree. Let's get to some audience questions.
Yeah.
Let's go to Red Tip Savage right here. Ever have birds that seem to message you?
Oh man, this is going to be good. I hadn't thought of that until last year on 11/11. We did a little ceremony in the Bradshaw house. Now, my friend Lily lives in Michigan, and she came out, and it was her idea. And I was happy to be a part of it. She had, I think, 5 of us all together. And now, previously at the ranch, I had never gotten any results with a spirit box. But Lily said she wanted to try to do the Estes method with a spirit box. That's when the spirit box is plugged into one person, has noise-canceling headphones, and a blindfold. The person who can hear the spirit box cannot hear you or see you asking questions. They just repeat what comes out of the box. And I had been interested in that, so I wanted to try that too. So I was really excited for this event. So we go to the house, and we're sitting there, and suddenly we start having a conversation. It lasted 10 or 15 minutes. And an entity came through, and the woman who was on the headphones, she did a great job because she was even conveying like giggles and laughter she heard and the emotions in the voice and stuff. And so this entity showed up, and he said he was a guardian. And I asked if anyone else was with him, and he said, yeah, I think it was like 7. And I was like, 7 plus you? And he said, yes, 7, me, 8. And I said, well, you're a guardian. What do you call the other ones? And he said, accomplices. I was like, this is getting weird. And so I said, is it possible I can see you? I said, can you see us right now? And they said, yes, we can. And I said, can I get to see you? And they giggled and they said, yes, as birds. And so apparently these things were claiming that birds are indeed one of the things they use to either disguise themselves or communicate to us somehow. There is a big, huge owl out at the ranch, and I feel kind of magical when that thing swoops around. But that's the interaction I've had with birds coming into play. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
It was really an odd night, yeah.
Next time you're at the ranch, take a harmonica with you. We used to get a whistle and a groan every time.
Oh, definitely. I'll try that. I feel like I might have tried a harmonica once, but either way, I'll do it again. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, excuse me. Any kind of things that have worked for other people, I'd love to hear about.
Let's go over to Sierra. Is the phenomena mostly dark, or do you think it's good?
Oh, I actually think the opposite. I can't say I've encountered anything at the ranch that was not positive. Uh, it's higher level beings are incredibly weird to be around. And I think that's where the fear comes from. And I think that's why people uh, kind of get the idea that it's a negative thing, but they're not actually. And I had to do what Cliff said. I had to spend a lot of time at the ranch to adjust to the way it feels there in order to see that for myself. The only place I've encountered anything bad was up in Jerome, doing the ghost tours in the basement of the old high school auditorium. That is a really, really creepy place with dark energy in it. And we've had things down there, didn't want us down there, and would create quite a ruckus to get us out. If you go to Jerome, go on a ghost tour. Yeah, do the 2 hour one. Go down in the basement, and you'll feel it.
Awesome. Here comes Steve. Jurgen, how's Tom Dongo doing? Haven't heard from him in a while.
Yeah, poor guy. Not that great health wise, unfortunately. He's doing the best he can. He's kind of past the point of being able to go out in the field very much, which is kind of a bummer. Every now and then, maybe once last year, he made it out. I try to keep in contact with him. I still send him anytime I find something cool. 2 days ago, there was a film crew out here, 4 guys, all with good cameras, and we went to the ranch. And man, I found one of the best Bigfoot tracks I've seen yet. I mean, clear, real clear toes and everything. And as soon as I got home, I just sent it all to Tom. I want him to be up to date on it. But yeah, his health is fading. If any of you are friends with him on Facebook, maybe I'll just shoot him a message or something, let him know you're thinking about him. I think he gets a kick out of that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, let us go to another question. We've got a couple from Steve here. And next one would be, have you had any other animal interventions lately?
Yeah, actually. There's a mountain lion out here running around. And I have an altar, so I wanted to make something special. I was working on my stone circle, and I knew I wanted an altar out in the woods, like something special to connect with Gaia, Mother Earth, Earth energy, all of that. And one day I was walking around looking for a big rock to move for my circle, and I got lightheaded and I was going to pass out, so I kind of bent down. And when I stood up, I didn't know where I was. And I turned my camera on because I was really confused. And I said, I have no idea where I'm at. Like, I'm near the ranch. Like, I could tell some of the hilltops I could see, so I could kind of tell where I was. But so I thought, okay, find a dry creek, and most of the dry creeks run down through the ranch. So if I find a dry creek, I can take it to the ranch. I found a dry creek, and this creek looked really cool. It was like a big 20, 30-foot cliff. And on the top of that cliff was a big black boulder just sitting right on the edge. It looked real weird. And I thought to myself, oh, wow, that's the altar. And I made my way up there. And now it's my altar. And man, it was a gift, this thing. It's this crazy big boulder on the edge of a cliff with this circular area where you can gather right in front of it and everything. There's a little tree over it. And when I found it, I thought it was really cool, but I also I'm trying to get in the habit of talking down to myself, but I do that a lot. So when I found it, I'm like, okay, this is cool, but don't go thinking, you were presented with an altar. Like, who are you? Like, get over yourself. So it was in the back of my mind, and I started saying, okay, if that's my altar, Gaia will give me some gifts for it. Let me know that was your altar. And so the next day, I went to this tree that I really like and decided to climb it and sit in it. I climbed it and sat in it, and there's a hole up there, and in the hole was a coyote skull. And I was like, get out of here. I was like, this is perfect for my altar. I wanted animal bones. I think I'd find a skull. And then the next time I was cruising around, there was a mountain lion tracks around the area between the circle and the altar. And it was pretty good size, like 5-inch paws. And I kind of wanted to see it, but I'm not gonna push it too much. And I thought, well, that would be cool if maybe, I don't know, maybe the lion could come into play for the altar somehow. And then it did. I killed a deer and left the skull and the spine and a bunch of the bones kind of near the altar. So now I have this deer skull and spine wired to the tree above the altar. The rattlesnake, that's an animal that's at the ranch that I've encountered quite a bit, and my interactions with it have changed. Originally, it would coil up and guard the house where I was doing the gift exchanges. And I didn't see it for a good 6-8 months. And then I saw it like last October, which was pretty cold. I was surprised it was even out. It's not starving. I mean, this big boy is 6 feet long if it's an inch. But now it doesn't coil for me. I got this real funny video of me and it just cruising along a trail together. It's just slithering along, and I'm just sitting there walking with it. And I posted it, and friends are like, isn't that a rattlesnake? I was like, yeah. And they said, isn't it going to bite you? I was like, well, it doesn't look like it's going to bite me. I was like, I don't, I guess not. So maybe the animals are getting to know me a little more. But I haven't had any of them like talk to me or anything like outrageous. Maybe just get more familiar with me. Yeah.
All right. We've got about 3.5 minutes. Let's get a couple more questions in. Jay is asking, I've heard that Bradshaw Ranch was made off limits. Therefore, who owns it right now?
So it's owned by the government, and it's leased to Northern Arizona University. When you go there, there's a very obvious fenced off area that the university is using to do agricultural study. I don't go in there. I don't go anywhere it says don't trespass. I just stick with areas that are easily accessible and just do that. And I wondered if the university was actually using the place. Finally, after all these years, about a couple months ago, I pulled up and there was a brown Chevy Colorado pickup with no stickers, but it had a government license plate. So I snapped a photo and I went up to the hillside where the crystals are and just waited. I could see a person down in the fenced area. And I waited till she came out, kind of made it so that I got to my car the same time she's getting to hers. And I just asked a simple question. I said, are you out here collecting crystals too? Because I had a handful of crystals. And she was actually a special needs woman. And she was like, no. Like, I was like an idiot. And I was like, I don't know. She said she was just planting seeds for the project. So there definitely is a presence there. From them, I've really only seen them that once. The rest of the property, I mean, there's a non-barbed wire fence, and if you follow it, it deteriorates and you're on the property. So I'm not sure. It doesn't say you can't go there. There's been days I've been there and the gate's wide open. I don't disturb anything or want to ruin anything. I don't want to get it closed off. So I just try to stay areas I think I'm allowed. I think it's tough to get a film permit. If you wanted to, film a TV show there, I don't know that they'd let you. So this kind of approach I'm taking is what's working.
We got 1 minute here, my friend. Let's go to Derek. I've heard craft have flown into the mountainsides in Sedona, then disappear. Have you seen this happen? Maybe a holograph projection or something?
No, yeah, it happens. They don't care what they fly through. They can fly through the water, through mountains. It means nothing to those craft. And it's due to the nature of the way they travel. They're picking a spot and moving through space-time to it. So to us visually, it looks like it went through the mountain. But yeah, 100% they do that. They absolutely will do that.
My friend, when's your next project coming out?
So I just came out with episode 2 with all the creatures. Episode 3, I'm hoping to have done in about 4 months. I have a couple other things to do in the meantime. There, when we're done with Hoodoo 2, there is going to be a final installment, one video. Hoping to have my PhD at that point. So Hoodoo 3, Dr. Tall, and we'll go over the dissertation and what it means, and just kind of present it so everyone has a chance to watch it, not read it.
My friend, it's always great to have you on Spaced Out Radio. Let's do it again a little bit later this year. Hoodoo Tall, Jurgen Hess, everybody. Coming up next, Swamp Dweller, then Little Timmy James of the UFO Report.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
All right, my man. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Yeah, bud, dude, that was so much. It's always the most enjoyable when I come on with you, dude. Love it so much. It goes so naturally and organically, I feel like.
Oh man, totally. Hopefully we'll get to see you in Vegas, my man.
Dude, I'm gonna start planning on it now. Heck yeah, that'd be so much fun. It'd be good to see everyone again. Just have a little. Yeah, Lou Baldwin told me to have more fun, so let's do it.
Yeah, we'll be at the Orleans. So, all right, my man. You take
All
care.
right, buddy. Have a good show.
Bye. Hoodoo Tall, everybody. Be right back. Little Timmy James is here. Oh, geez, my door didn't close. One sec, Timmy. All right. There we go. Give me a sec. And let's bring Tim in. What's happening, buddy?
Not too much. What's happening with you?
Oh, not too much.
Good show.
Hi, Chris. Thank you tonight to Mama Catherine, Richard, for the super chats. Greatly appreciate it. Swamp Dweller is about 2 minutes.
Okie dokie.
Probably come stop by and see you tomorrow.
All righty.
Yeah.
I will be
Got
there.
about 17 seconds. Teen. Here we go with the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. It's jam-packed and the UFO report with Little Tim James. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you for joining us as we continue this roller coaster of woo-ness each and every night. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Theomancy. Theomancy is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's head to the swamp.
Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio's Swamp. I'm Swamp Dweller, and tonight I'm going to take you on a mystic journey of the unknown, sharing tales of monsters, legends, and nightmares. Welcome to the Spaced Out Radio Swamp. This happened to me yesterday, and I'm still confused. My girlfriend and I were hanging out at around 2 a.m. when we decided to get food before she went home. Once we got our food, we ate in a church parking lot. I was getting a bit paranoid as we ate, feeling like we were being watched. I began to look around to see if anyone was around us, but I couldn't spot anyone. So I calmed down for just a minute and returned to talking to my girlfriend when I noticed some shadow behind her head, standing underneath the pavilion near us. I figured it was just some lighting thing, or maybe I was just not seeing it correctly. But the more I stared at it, the more out of place it seemed. I'll admit I was pretty scared, so I asked my girlfriend if we could leave. She said yes, and we ended up going fairly quickly after that. On the way home, I wondered if it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Then I looked over at my girlfriend, who had tears in her eyes. I asked her what was wrong, and she said, "Did you see that shadow too?" It's safe to say I was pretty freaked out and began explaining to her that I wanted to leave because of the shadow. She then told me that she had noticed the shadow pretty much instantly once we started eating, but decided not to say anything because she thought it was her mind playing tricks on her too. We were both really freaked out and ended up going back to my house for a little while longer because she was so scared. Today, though, we decided to go back to that same park at the same time to see if we were just freaking out about nothing or if something actually happened. And, of course, the area was just normal. She wondered if maybe what we saw was just a person standing there. But for some reason, I just don't think so. The shadow seemed inhuman. Kind of just like a dark mass more than a shape. I'm still pretty freaked out about it, and it won't leave my mind. I really wonder if we saw something paranormal, or maybe our minds were just playing tricks on us.
Thank you, Swamp Dweller, for another spooky story. If you want more just like that, do us a favor. Head on over to YouTube, type in Swamp Dweller, and from there, hit subscribe, ring that bell. He's got thousands of stories just like that waiting for you to listen to for free. Let's go to the UFO report.
That is an interplanetary flying space saucer. You have made me very angry. Very angry indeed.
Our good friend Little Timmy James is here for the UFO report, the abbreviated one that happens every time at this night, every time this week. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all
Good.
right, man. I'm excited. I got the day off tomorrow. I'm going to
Uh-huh.
relax. I'm going to sleep in until about 9 o'clock.
Nice.
I'm a rebel that way. And then I'm going to come hang out with you for a little bit because I can.
That's right. That's right. Good deal. Good deal. Yeah, great show tonight. That was super cool topics.
By the way, you've already started revamping our website.
Yes.
It's spacedoutradio.com, and you put up the new bios for everybody,
Yes.
including one of yourself there, which is highly unattractive. I'm not. I'm gonna.
yeah.
I'm teasing. I'm teasing. You know. Thank you for making me look good on there for having a face for radio.
I was looking at all of us going, uh-huh. No,
Now,
just
we're not
scratch.
the best looking crew around here, but man, do we get the job done.
That's what it's all about, my friend. That's what it's all about. So I was watching tonight and I was going through some stuff and just tweaking my report. And I was like, please don't talk about what I'm going to talk about. Please don't. And just at the end there, and it was about owls. I was like, don't talk about owls. So we're good. So I actually, there's not a lot of humongous stuff going on in the UFO world and news today. So I thought, we've talked and danced around owls a few times, and I think in our chat room as well. So I found something on owls in relation to UFOs, among other things, and I thought that might be interesting to go through that. So the owls are not what they seem. This was the cryptic warning uttered by the giant in Twin Peaks, echoing eerily through David Lynch and Mark Frost's surreal series. For illustrator and author Mike Cleland, though these psychic pronouncements ring especially true. For the past decade, he has worked tirelessly to catalog paranormal sightings of the fluffy avian predators. So, as the self described owl guy of the UFO world, Cleland has become the foremost writer theorizing a connection between owls and alien encounters. His book on the subject, The Messengers, is a collection of anecdotes from people who claim to have had paranormal experiences involving these ominous birds. It all began after Cleland saw owls circling overhead for an entire hour during a 2006 camping trip. Familiar with the supposed UFO owl link, Cleland intuitively felt there was something mystical, otherworldly, or even alien to the animals above. Moved by the events, Cleland eventually connected owl sightings to disturbing alien abductions experiences of his own, spurring him to post a call for any strange owl anecdotes on his website. To his surprise, the story streamed in, tying the birds to UFO abductions, missing time, and other strange phenomena. Meanwhile, owls began to manifest themselves to Cleland. In a flurry of weirdness, for instance, appearing to hover at eye level before fluttering away as he rode his bike through the small town of Idaho town. Now he's collected thousands of accounts with at least one landing in his inbox every day. That people are actually having experiences that imply contact with some sort of non-human intelligence is strange enough, Cleland writes in his book. Adding owls into the mix makes it all more bizarre. Like a performance on stage, the owl is playing a small role in a grand drama. The part it plays is a riddle begging to be solved. After encountering an owl at 4 a.m., one of Cleland's contacts says her car careened off a bluff on a mountain highway. She was uninjured despite the airbags failing to deploy. It would appear that Mike Cleland is not much closer to solving this riddle, though he has some ideas, conceding that his owl hypothesis is way out beyond the boundaries of UFO mainstream. He insists he's brought over some stodgy folks to his way of thinking after talks at a conference. I've had my own direct experiences, and some would call these UFO abductions, Cleland said. That's a term I use all the time, but it's not the right term because it's stranger than that. It's more elusive and more mysterious. Before the owls, Cleveland's own experiences included walking at his small house in Maine at the age of 30 to find a bright light flooding in through his bedroom window and 5 spindly aliens standing in his yard, backlit by a singular round shape. At first, he dismissed this as a dream, but it was unlike any dream he'd had before, extremely vivid and accompanied by an uneasy feeling of distorted reality, and occurrence so common it's been dubbed the Oz factor by ufologists. And it occurred again and again. Frenetically tumbling down this rabbit hole, Cleland expected to find a magazine article or two on the subject. Instead, he discovered a bottomless pit of strangeness where owls seemed to be interwoven into the UFO experience, like a very thin thread. With his research, he felt he was tugging on that thread and fell deeper down the rabbit hole. Strange stories within his book include testimony of Ron Johnson, a regular UFO conference attendee, who claimed to have had alien visitations at home and who noticed a steady stream of guest owls by the porch of his mother's house. One in particular would watch him as he left for work and remain perched on the same branch when he returned later that day. Once, Johnson says, he felt an inexplicable desire to leave the house in the middle of the night. And when he did, he found 4 foot tall owls standing in his driveway waiting to exchange stares. These impossibly large owls, as Cleland calls them, are a regular enough incident. One unnamed contactee claimed to have seen a UFO and then shortly afterwards pulled over in his car where he was greeted by a 4 foot tall owl with a wingspan large enough to encase the front of the vehicle's chassis. Wing to wing mirror. Cleland's notes that even the very tallest owls should not be this tall. And from the archives of UFO research and fellow owl enthusiast Haken Blomqvist is a story from Sweden in summer of 1966. 2 men traveling by moped pulled over for a bathroom break, and when they did, noticed an owl sitting on a post beside the road. Shortly afterwards, they claimed to have seen a large silvery craft hovering on 150 meters above the ground. When it landed, there appeared to be movement by strange humanoid figures within. Among the main anecdotes, Cleland tells of some of the most common experiences surrounded missing time. Contactees stop, admire the owl, and when they're on their way again, they realize hours have passed. A theory is these owls' appearances could be screen memories, physically implanted visions where the owls are merely disguised stand-ins with hypnotic regression therapy, later revealing something much weirder. In fact, they're so common that, according to Cleland, when he brought up the owl phenomenon to the late veteran alien abduction researcher Bud Hopkins, he would roll his eyes and say that the stories are everywhere. Not all of the reports in his book featured a supposed alien connection, although there are many of those. Some instead point to a seemingly ungraspable mythical link, such as foreboding, forewarnings, or personal spiritual awakening. Cleland avoids concluding that owls are doing the bidding of aliens, though. I don't think the UFO's occupants are pushing a little button and saying, "Calling all owls, meet us at the spot to give this person a psychic experience," he said. I think it happened in a much more mystical, overlapping way than that. The mystical foreboding is found all over contemporary culture and sometimes in features aliens too. The enigmatic owls of Twin Peaks are theorized by some to have been influenced by an owl encounter in Whitley Strieber's influential alien abduction book, Communion. And Slaughterhouse Five's traumatized time traveler, Billy Pilgrim, seemed to be warned by an owl when he was abducted suddenly by a flying saucer from the planet Trafalmandor. Further back, though, history, further back in history, throughout history, many cultures have held up owls as creatures of spiritual significance, whether portents of doom and death or symbolic of wealth and wisdom. There's the owl-like Goic, great prince of hell, Stolas, who teaches astronomy and is knowledgeable about herbs, plants, and precious stones. In Deuteronomy, readers are instructed not to eat owls, and they've mentioned elsewhere in the Bible too. Native American cultures place numerous spiritual associations on owls, ranging from ill omens to prophecy, visions, and insight and protection. Unless you're a rodent, their reputation as omens of death is perhaps unfair, says nature writer and author of Hidden Lives of Owls, Lee Calves. Eating as many as 1,500 rodents a year, there's a strong case for owls protecting people from diseases like the plague.
There was also the pseudo-fictional movie called The Fourth Kind that allegedly took place in Nome, Alaska. Now, this is not a true story, but it is a great movie depicting this exact thing. And Mike Clellan was one of the, one of the people they kind of went to about the owls regarding this movie because of his expertise. We got to get him back on the show to talk about this. That has been way too long since we've had him. But yeah, I mean, look, we don't see owls 4 feet tall. No. And a lot of people claim that a lot of these alien encounters, the beings are actually morphing themselves into something that we can accept.
Right.
Something that we're not going to be scared of because they don't want to show their true selves because we may have a heart attack, we may have a stroke, we may just pass out and faint. And so a lot of them allegedly disguise themselves, whether it's as humans or owls or other animals, in order to get closer to humans. But I mean, a 4-foot owl? No way, man.
No.
You see a 4-foot owl? I'm just going to tell you right now, get the hell out.
Yeah, no kidding. And it's weird because, I mean, I've had 2 experiences with owls. Well, I've had a lot more than 2, but 2 that actually meant something, I guess. I had one when I was hunting, and we'd come back from hunting. We were sitting around the fire at night, and everybody kind of crawled off in bed, and I was still sitting there, and I was finishing off my scotch sort of thing and sitting by the fire. And there were lots of owls where we hunt, and this owl kept flying over camp and then back and over camp. And I was like, what is he looking for? Mice. And then he sat in the tree behind and just screeched and screeched and screeched and screeched. And I was like, geez, why don't you just be quiet? And then over to the tree over here, and then back behind me and over. I'm like, what's going on? And then coming out of the corner at the far end of the hunting area, there was a grizzly bear coming up out of the river. It was like, banging on the doors, everybody up, there's a grizzly in camp. The other one was the following night after my father-in-law passed away. I came home, and there was an owl. We had a 1-story house, and there was an owl sitting right on the peak of the house, and he stayed there like probably 3 days. And I was like, is that ever weird? Like, more than this we're talking in the lower mainland too, right? So it was like strange, cool, but strange.
What else you got for us? We got 5 minutes.
Yeah, I got a kind of a creepy one. So, let me see here. Yes, it appears that stories of alien abductions involving human mutilation are a lot more common than we'd like to think. One of the earliest cases happened in 1956 on Holloman Air Force Base. Sergeant Jonathan Lovett and Major William Cunningham were walking through the desert region of the Air Force Base collecting shrapnel from recent weapons tests. This was a routine act that shouldn't have been dangerous at all, except for a couple of cuts from too sharp debris. At one point, Lovett went behind a dune to find find more shrapnel. Cunningham then heard Lovett shriek in terror and quickly went to see what his colleague was screaming about. What Cunningham saw made him scream as well. The two men saw a hovering silver disc with a metal rope extending from it. The rope then grabbed Lovett and pulled him into the craft. Whether paralyzed by fear or from some other means, Cunningham was unable to move and could only watch as screaming Lovett was dragged onto the ship above. When Cunningham snapped out of the trance, the ship had already flown away. He reported his findings to his higher-ups, who set out on a massive manhunt throughout the base. Mission Control picked up a fast reading on its radar, but the item itself was unidentified. No trace of Lovett could be found for 3 days until his body was discovered. Lovett showed no signs of trauma, but was drained of every single drop of his blood. His eyes were missing. His anus and genitalia had been removed with expert precision, almost as if it was a plug. Most disturbing, every animal in that area that had tried to eat on the corpse had died and were laying dead, feet around the body. And when I found this story, there are actual photographs, disclosed photographs. It's, I was like, okay, that's, yeah.
I
Mhm.
mean, you know, that doesn't surprise me. In fact, the late Butch Witkowski, who used to be a regular on this show, the first ever show we did with him was on human mutilations.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And
wild.
it's a very, very real thing. And these people are getting sliced and diced with laser-like precision. A knife wouldn't do it.
No.
You know, people are messy. People don't
Yeah.
cut clean.
No, for sure. And then, like I say, some of the photos, like for this story, there was about 2 or 3 photos, but I kind of fell into this area that was all about that. And all photos, every story had photos. And I was like, wow, like, yeah, people's faces. And like you say, with precision, right? It was like, yeah, almost like they botched it. Because you always hear the stories that, oh, yeah, he disappeared and lost time. And then they found him 3 days later walking around, lost and mesmerized. But yeah, these ones are brutal.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a lot of cases like that, or if there are a lot of cases like that, but we just don't hear about them because they're covered up so quickly. But they are a disgusting part of what happens, and the big question is who or what is doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when we don't have earthly answers to, whether it's an animal or a human being, chopped up like a Ginsu knife,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't really have the real answers of what's going on. We don't have that technology, as far as we know, that can take the organs of a human or an animal and literally be more precise than a surgeon.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not all friendly, apparently, people. Yeah, that's like you say, they just ran down that rabbit hole, and it was obviously had some stuff on farm animals as well. But I was like, oh, humans now, great.
I hear you. Little Timmy James, we will chat with you next week on the UFO report, and hopefully something's going to break here soon, man. This is getting a little boring.
Yeah,
Getting a
I
little
know.
boring.
It is.
Not that you're boring. You really are. All right. Coming up next, Day 101 and the weird news of the week.
This is Spaced Out Radio and your host, Dave Scott.
If you're listening on your phone, make sure you run outside if you got clear sky.
Yeah, for
Flood
sure.
moon's happening right now.
Sweet. I'm gonna check that out. Right on. So your day off tomorrow. Cool, cool.
Oh man, I'm so looking forward to sleeping in.
No kidding. Oh, I hope you get a good sleep.
Definitely not editing the show tonight.
No.
Let me tell you that. No editing tonight. I'll download it, but I'm not
One and
editing
done.
tonight. No, I got some stuff I want to do in studio tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Terry and kind of go from there as well.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I'll be talking to you tomorrow, and you'll pop in anyway. And yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about other stuff that's happening.
Yeah, Kira just sent me this gorgeous picture here.
Oh no! Oh wow, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's awesome. We get messages like crazy here.
Very cool.
All righty. I will talk to you tomorrow. Everybody have a great weekend. And yeah, we'll see you Monday. Have a good night and have a good weekend, everybody.
Sounds good. Later.
You bet.
Little Timmy James, John Curley, how you doing? We got about 3 minutes. 3 minutes, everybody. I'm trying to spell my words like Canadians so I fit in better when I live there. Hmm. Two minutes, everybody. Ninety seconds. Sorry if I'm looking like I'm thinking. I'm trying to put my Dave 101 together. Thank you to Major Lee, Mama Catherine, and Richard for the super chats tonight. Greatly appreciate it. Here we go with the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Dave 101 coming up right around the corner. Thank you for tuning us in. We really do appreciate it. Reminder to all of you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. It's that time of the week, that time of the night, where I yell at all of you to get off my lawn. It's the Dave 101.
Open up the door, it's Dave! Who? Dave, D-A-V-E! What is this?
Dave not here.
It's the Dave 101.
I can see you're really upset about this. I honestly think you ought to sit down calmly, take a stress pill, and think things over.
Leave the killer out. Yeah, leave the killer. Dave's a mess.
All right, we're going to celebrate a little bit here because it is the 28th anniversary of a very large UFO event. What happened 28 years ago? The Phoenix Lights. Now, a lot happened during that day where jet fighters were allegedly scrambled, military bases were locked down, people were seeing this weird boomerang-shaped craft flying through the sky without any noise. It was right out of the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Now, many people believe this was a UFO. Even actor Kurt Russell was flying his private plane into Phoenix when he and his young son actually saw the lights face to face. The next day, the government got involved. This is where Governor Fife Symington came to the podium saying, "We captured the bad guy," and they trotted out a gentleman in an alien uniform in handcuffs being escorted by police, basically saying he was sorry for scaring and making everybody laugh. To the tens of thousands of people who actually saw this and eyewitnessed this event firsthand, people aren't dumb. They don't sometimes act like it, but hey, when it comes to this event, I believe there were something like 70,000+ witnesses that literally watched these boomerangs fly over and hover over the Phoenix night. Why is this important to today? Well, the key word there is the government got involved. And look what happened. They made a mockery of their citizens. They made a mockery of the subject, and they wanted to shuffle it all under the rug. Later on in the years, Governor Symington, well past his position, came out and basically said he was an eyewitness too. And yeah, probably shouldn't have done that, he said. But nobody ever asked the question, who put you up to this? Who told you to shove this under the rug? How does it tie into today? Well, since 2017, we have seen an influx of government officials getting more and more loud about this subject. the subject of UFOs. Now UAP is right there for the taking. And Dosh Garnett, to steal a term from Tim Burchett, we're going to find out what it is. We're going to bring transparency to this subject. No, you're not. I hate to sound like I'm getting fickle. I hate to sound like a cranky old white-haired curmudgeon looking at this subject. But I could tell you this. Like many in the UFO world on social media have been saying lately, I'm losing faith. I'm losing faith in the government rendition of so-called disclosure. Now, I'm not going to tell you whether you should or not. That's a personal decision for you. But I don't need whistleblowers. I don't need the government having more hearings, and all we hear is, I could tell you in a skiff. I could tell you in a skiff. If you want me to answer that, I could tell you in a skiff. Or the flip-flop answer, I cannot answer that question due to my NDAs. No, I cannot answer that question due to my NDAs. No, guess what? Can't answer that due to my NDAs. Read my book and support NASA. This is what we're getting. The whistleblowers are coming out, but how many of them do we really trust? I want to believe. Oh, if anything, I want to believe. Because I love the woo. I am the master of the woo. I want to understand and hear their stories and their testimonies, but I can't trust it. I just can't. And I wish the public didn't have such a hatred for the mainstream media that it's tainted their understanding of how the medium works. How does this tie in? Let me tell you. When you have people controlling whom people speak to because of the size of their YouTube channel, because of the size of their influencer community, and they're not going anywhere near the UFO community, that should tell you and signal a red flag to you. And that's what we have going on. It's an old complaint by me. Sure, you've probably heard it before. When you control the medium, you control the message. And the worst thing that can happen in today's media markets is when the message gets controlled. That should be a red flag. There are so many red flags surrounding many of the whistleblowers and the government officials that are in on this. I can see why Nancy Mace and Anna Paulina Luna and Lauren Boebert and Tim Burchett and all of these guys are getting fed up with the lack of true testimony. Now, that a president has changed, will they actually recall these people and say, hey, give us the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? And we'll see what if they actually do. But the question is, who are they doing it for? Are they doing it for the American public, or are they doing it for themselves and their own self-serving curiosity of wanting to know the truth? And to them, if they find out the truth, that is the transparency. Because we as a UFO community, we as a public, we're not going to see anything. The majority of the public is going to be none the wiser. We're going to catch on because this is what we do. This is what we study. Can we get around that? I highly doubt it. I really highly doubt it. Remember the old saying, don't trust anybody? I think that's where we are in the UFO field now. I have more opportunity to believe someone who is an unknown in this field, who messages me on Facebook or emails me and says, Dave, back in 1994, I was riding my bike and all of a sudden this beam of light started following me. It was evening on a summer night. I was riding my bike home from my friend's house, and it was only 3 blocks away. It's something that we did all the time back then because parents actually allowed their children outside. And boom, I got home I woke up in my bed at 4:30 in the morning to my mother waking me up saying, "Where have you been?" Look, that story is hypothetical. It is completely fiction. But that is the type of story we're talking about right now. I have more trust in them than the whistleblowers that have come out, and these people are supposed to be in the know. When I started in the UFO field 10 and a half years ago, I was told point blank, if they work for the government, they are not working for ufology. I heard it from Grant Cameron. I heard it from Paul Hellyer. I heard it from Lorian Fenton, Melinda Leslie, some of the legends in this field. And now look at us. We bought into the government BS about this subject. We go from UFO to UAP and every other acronym in between to get them off of little green men, swamp gas. I don't know why gas was so hard to say there, but swamp gas, flying saucers, anal probes, and everything in between, because that is the stigma around the UFO community, according to those in the know. That's why they came up with this UAP stupidity. That's why they came up with NHI, psionics, anything to put it in their terms to make it theirs. Everybody who follows this field should not be excited by the whistleblowers, should not be excited by the government officials. The whistleblowers are probably good people. But can we trust their stories when there could be a secondary reasoning behind it? Government contracts. Let's look at that. Lou Elizondo, spook. Ryan Graves wanting government contracts. Skywatcher program wanting government contracts. That leads to Jake Barber. It all seems to be intertwining. Where are these contracts coming for? What kind of contracts are they looking for? Are they looking for contracts for psionics that anybody could do? I taught my friend before this show tonight. He's been seeing a UFO every couple nights or a couple weeks around his house. Okay, we don't get a lot of drone flyers here in the winter. But he sees this big orb of light in the sky. And no, it's not Venus. No, it's not Jupiter. No, it's not the moon. And he's wondering, how can I communicate with that? I showed him. He's going to try it out. The psionics, summoning, whatever you want to call it. CE5, heist, plenty of names for it. But what can we trust? What can we trust? That's what it comes down to. And right now, I think the only true trust is the people who are having the experience. John, who works on the construction site. Jane, who works as a nurse. Real people with real lives having real experiences that they cannot explain. Now, if you're in Radioland and you've never been to our YouTube channel and sat in during the show and chatted with our incredible audience that is in there, you're missing out on a couple of reasons. Number one, they're great people. Number two, the majority of them are experiencers. And number three, if you have had an experience you can't explain on your own, these are people who can help. They want to hear your story. They may have some answers for you. That's how it will disclose, in my opinion. Never mind catastrophic disclosure, government disclosure, control of the narrative, whatever we've called it in the past. True disclosure happens from the eyewitnesses themselves. They may not have the video, they may not have the smoking gun photograph, but the one thing they have is the experience to break down and help people understand what happened to them. The people of the UFO community and those listening in who have a deep interest in this subject are the ones who could lead the charge. I would recommend it because the government story, we don't know how far it's going to go. That's the problem with ufology right now. Remember, people, in 2018, Lou Elizondo wrote an article on Medium that said ufology must die. I think they've done a good job at killing it. They've divided the people. They've created animosity. And the stars of yesteryear's ufology are just trying to get an extra subscriber as we speak. That's what it comes down to. When you take over the narrative, you have control. When you take over the media and who the people can talk to, you have control. And right now, ufology has no control to you apology. That's your Dave 101.
As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the latest bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News.
Loud noises! I am good at things, fighting and reading the news.
It's time once again for Spaced Out Radio's Weird News of the Week.
Here's a creepy one to start off with. It's always a gamble when you get on a plane. You're hoping for a peaceful, incident-free flight, but you never know what's going to go down in the air. You might be seated next to a screaming baby, have the person behind you constantly kicking your seat, or you could start bleeding out of every orifice in your head. That, or somebody might see a demon on board and lose their absolute mind. That's what happened recently on an American Airlines flight to Miami. Everything started off just fine, but suddenly DeLang Augustin started yelling and shaking uncontrollably. Thinking he was having a seizure, the flight attendants rushed in to help him. However, the man was in complete control of his faculties, or at least he thought he was. He was simply terrified because he had seen some kind of demonic entity on the plane. Well, he wasn't about to let the servant of Satan go unopposed. Augustin began behaving erratically before attacking the flight attendants. Hearing of the commotion, the pilot turned the plane around and returned to the trip's starting location. However, before everyone could get off the plane, the other passengers had to help subdue the still berserking Augustin. He has now been booked into jail on multiple charges. However, they couldn't confirm whether or not if he was able to defeat the demon. Yeah, the demonic incident took place on March 10th aboard an American Airlines flight from Savannah, Georgia to Miami, Florida. It wasn't a huge flight, as according to court affidavits, there were only 8 passengers on the plane. Among them were Augustin's siblings. One of them was DeLang Augustin, 31, and his sister, who hasn't been named. The passengers piled onto the plane and it took off. Typical. That's usually what happens. They got to enjoy a peaceful flight for a whopping minute before all hell broke loose, literally. Suddenly, seemingly without reason, Augustin began to scream and shake. The flight crew rushed to help the man, as they naturally thought he was having a medical emergency, but his behavior certainly made it seem, that way at least, that he yelled. Augustin began yelling and swallowing the beads of a rosary he was carrying. Concerned, a flight attendant approached Augustin and asked if he needed help. For attempting to help Augustin, the flight attendant was rewarded with a foot to the chest. Augustin kicked him so hard that the attendant went crashing across the aisle into the window of the opposite side of the plane. Oh my. That's when the crew realized Augustin was having a mental or a health emergency, maybe a mental health emergency, at least not one that would leave him physically debilitated. Augustin's choices appeared purposeful, though difficult to describe, FBI Special Agent Savannah Solomon stated. The pilot, informed that a fight had broken out, immediately turned the plane around and proceeded to land back at Savannah. However, that left Augustin with plenty of time to go nuts. As the plane landed, Augustin rushed to the front where a flight attendant was attempting to get the doors open. He began wildly punching the crew member, perhaps to prevent them from releasing the demon on board. Augustin was beside himself that it took multiple passengers' help to push him down onto the ground. According to the affidavit, they subdued his sister as well, although there's no mention of her getting violent. So, with the plane back on the ground and the cops at the scene, Augustin was arrested. The police then were told that he had swallowed his rosary beads. Well, that complicated things as they now had to take the man to the hospital. He was evaluated and cleared for going to jail, so we suppose he was doing all right. Upon questioning, Augustin told the cops that he and his sister had been traveling to Haiti to flee religious attacks of a spiritual nature. Unfortunately, their enemies had apparently followed them onto the plane. He explained that he had told his sister to close her eyes and pray, as Satan's disciple had followed them onto the plane. He was convinced the Legion didn't want him or his sister to reach Haiti. And why did he swallow the rosary beads? Obviously, because they are a weapon of strength in the spiritual warfare, he explained. Augustin, by the way, well, he's not very comfortable. He's in jail, charged with a misdemeanor battery, misdemeanor obstruction of law enforcement, and a felony charge of criminal property damage. My question on this one is, when he started attacking the flight attendants, where were all the alpha men on board? Where were all the alpha women on board? Why didn't they just get this guy instead of waiting until he rushed through the front to assault another flight attendant before pinning him down? That's what I want to know. Maybe he was hallucinating that there was a demon on board. But hey, what we do deal with on this show, you never know. He may have been telling the truth. Just makes you scratch your head and go, isn't that true? As we say hello, Mr. Hoodoo Tall, rocking in the background with Little Brothers, rocking in and out of every single show. Get your horns up with the guitar, God himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone with our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, Rogan, Facebook, LinkedIn, Space Travelers Club, and on X, hashtag Spaced Out Radio.
I know you're out there somewhere.
Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and is for any events limited. Thank you so much for choosing your evening with us. Because together, my
Make a
friends,
mistake. We're watching.
we own the night. Mr.
We may find you to fall. We will expose you. I know you're out there somewhere. Watching me.
Yes, the blue train has docked for the night. Soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them. Good night, everybody. Good show, everybody. Good job. Great work. Great work. I'm going to be cutting this off early here, but tomorrow night on the show, because I want to go check out, see if I can find the eclipse happening. Tomorrow night on the show, Heather Arnold is here. We're going to be talking about the giants of Aruba. So thank you for tuning us in. Thank you to Richard, Mama Catherine, and Major Lee ×2 for the super chats. We're going to talk to you tomorrow night, everybody.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
If you need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.